All right, we are going to call this June 2nd council meeting to order. If the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Royshino Farrell.
Here.
Mayor Josh Amato.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Boyer.
Here.
Councilmember Pam Stewart.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Treen.
Here.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyer, will you please lead us in the pledge?
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, will you please read the land acknowledgement statement?
Yes, thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved and
Second.
seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. With that, we will go to public comment. And as the sign-up sheet is being brought up to me, if you have public comment, I'll call 3 people in a row. You could line up behind the podium if you are able. You'll have 3 minutes to give your public comment. Please state your name and city of residence. Once we get down to 0, I'll, look at you and then start to talk you off the podium. All right. First person up, we have Amy McCumber, followed by Mary Wichter, and then Lynn Yang.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and allowing us to speak. So I just wanted to let you know that we're still worried about this blocking of a right-of-way that is definitely available to us in Tamarack. And just today, I was out with my son, just barely, and sometimes the sun, sometimes the reflection on the water, sometimes sound can set him off and cause seizure activity in his brain. And just today, literally at 5 o'clock, I was driving him back because he had let me know, whoa, we're here. So I was like, all right, let's go. Dropped him in. I shouted to, I said to a friend, just hand me his clothes. He was in his swimming suit. I quickly got him in the car, drove him around, and got into the traffic over by the landing, unfortunately, which is really a challenge. And he was frantically going, let's go. And I'm like, we got this. It's going to be okay. Got him through. And then he signed that he wanted chicken. So away we went to McDonald's, got him some chicken. I ran right in. They know who I am. Paid him real quick, got him 6 nuggets, came right out. And I said, all right, let's go home. And on the way home, I sent out for help and everything just to make sure. I barely, got him there. But on that route from McDonald's to my house, I could have cut off about 5 minutes of drive time. And in a situation like that, it's vital. It's vital because he needs to be in a quiet, dark space that's safe and controlled. And I got him there and we were okay. But I still have not heard one rational reason to allow a citizen to block a road. I haven't heard one, and you guys have heard multiple reasons why this is important to see it through. It's crazy to allow lawlessness in our city, and you're elected for a reason. So please do something about this because it's really affecting several of us. And when you think about if there's snow, that is the flattest way out for those people. All on that road, the next one over, it's a safety issue. It's not a matter of convenience. I wouldn't even use the road if I didn't need to at that moment for my son. I guarantee you that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mary Wichter, then Lynn, and then Marty Rhodes.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mary Wichter. I've been in Sammamish for 25 years, and I live in Tamarack. So as you know, we've talked about there are blockages that need to be unblocked, and we've talked with numerous people about it, and I finally decided if I had a magic wand to make the blockages go away, I would use it, and we'd be in the same problem the next day, because anybody and everybody in Tamarack or in any private road could simply build a fence in the middle of the road, and the city would say, does it need a permit? We're not here. We don't do anything. And the real frustrating thing is the city owns Tract A, the large tract in Tamarack, and they own halfway into the road. So the blockages are actually on city-owned property. So since I was going so crazy, I had a lot of trouble sleeping this week, and I normally don't have trouble sleeping. I thought back, and I was like, this came up when there was Inglewood and Tamarack issues in about 2020, 21. And David Pyle had actually contacted me at that time and said, hey, we're trying to get better minimal road standards. We did this code interpretation, which I'm holding, and I emailed you. And he said, if you guys want to stand up for it, and there was another person from Inglewood. So we did, and we attended some of the cases going on. So I'm just going to read from the code interpretation. You've heard me before say there shouldn't be a fire hydrant blocked anywhere in the city. I don't know if that code is going to come to fruition or not, but this is actually code that we already have. So as you know, for fire hydrants and fire access, there's the International Fire Code. And the code interpretation is for SMC 1605130. What are the adequate fire protection requirements for new development proposals? Because 4 houses have been built on Northeast 6th Street in Tamarack. Took them a lot of years because they sold 4 times, each had 2 foreclosures, but that's what we're trying to recover from as well. And it says, what are the required dimensions of a fire apparatus access road? Is turnaround required, and can you park cars? So the city, who uses Eastside Fire and Rescue, they said they wanted to kind of say more about it, so this code interpretation says more than the code. When we talk about fire apparatus access roads, it includes more than just the fire lane outside. It encompasses the roadways and parking lots that must be traveled in order to allow access and operational setup for firefighting rescue apparatus. The intent behind the requirement is that fire engines should be able to get close enough to a building to deploy hose lines effectively, access fire hydrants, and access fire department connections without any access restrictions, not with restrictions that our wonderful fire people can get by. It says without any restrictions, because during life safety emergencies, time is really valuable. And then when it goes to dimensions for a fire apparatus access road, the dimensions says fire apparatus access roads shall have an unobstructed width of not less than 20 feet, so not 10 feet or 17 feet or 19 feet, the measures I sent you. And I hope that you'll read it and get back to me, because this is really getting to be a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem thing.
Lynn, then Marty, and then Steve Christensen.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lin Yang. I know many of you guys know me. I'm here today to encourage you to support the creation of a true community center in Building 120. Sammamish is a city with 65,000 residents, and since the city's founding, we've lacked the spaces to learn, gather, and stay connected. We currently don't have a central, flexible space that is accessible to the public, at least not one that requires joining an expensive gym or an after-school program. Instead, our youth, seniors, and civic groups are all fighting for limited room in parks, schools, churches, and the Beaver Lake Lodge. This isn't just inconvenient, it limits what our community can become. A dedicated community center would change that. For seniors, community centers are critical lifelines. They reduce isolation, support health and independence, and provide opportunities for social connection and lifelong learning. Research consistently shows that access to programs and social engagement improves well-being and helps seniors stay active and connected. For our youth, a community center offers something just as valuable, a safe, welcoming space to gather, learn new skills, and build relationships. When young people have space to connect with peers and mentors, we see stronger academic outcomes, better mental health, and a deep sense of belonging. Beyond individuals, community centers are engines for innovation and civic life. They give nonprofits a home base to expand their impact. They create spaces for new ideas, whether it's cultural programming, language classes, arts, or small grassroots initiatives that don't have a foothold yet in our community. That's the gap that Building 120 can fill. Now, the Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam has documented how American society experienced a long-term decline in social capital, the relationships, trust, networks, and basically civic life that holds communities together. Essentially, our society is increasingly bowling alone. I see this dynamic happening right here in Sammamish. As a city council, you can directly change that dynamic. You can choose to strengthen the social bonds that keep our community together by investing in the community spaces that do that. I urge you to move forward quickly to turn Building 120 into a community center that's accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Marty, then Steve, and then Paula Harper Christensen.
Good evening, Mayor Amato, members of the City Council and staff. My name is Marty Rhodes, and I know most of you, and I've campaigned for some of you. I've been a Sammamish resident since 1996, and I'm here tonight to urge you to move forward with transforming the 120 building into a community center. Simply put, Sammamish needs a place to gather. Over the past several months, I've been encouraged by the number and variety of residents who have spoken in this room in support of this vision. You've heard from quilters, board game enthusiasts, pickleball players, robotics students, and makers interested in 3D printing. I belong to a group of seniors who enjoy figure drawing, yet every summer we suspend our activities because we have nowhere to meet. These may seem like different interests, but they share a common need, a place to gather. For the past 30 years, I've been a Rotarian. Through Rotary, I've seen firsthand what happens when people come together regularly around a shared purpose. People who may disagree on politics, policies, or priorities can still stand side by side, packing food for local students, raising scholarship funds, or addressing community challenges. Strong communities are built when people have opportunities to know one another as neighbors before they encounter each other as opponents. A community center is not just a building. It is an infrastructure for connection. It creates opportunities for friendships, volunteerism, learning, civic engagement, and collaboration. It gives residents a place to work together on the issues that matter most to our city. That's why Sammamish Rotary and Sammamish Library are sponsoring a free screening of Join and Die, or Die, a documentary inspired by the groundbreaking work of social scientist Robert Putnam. The film explores why joining clubs, organizations, and community groups matters, and why the future health of our democracy depends on our ability to connect with one another. I would like to personally invite each of you to attend July 30th, 4 p.m., Sammamish Public Library. I believe the film makes a compelling case for something many residents already understand. Communities thrive when people have places to come together. Sammamish needs a place to gather. The 120 building can be that place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Steve, and then Paula, and Swan Jacobson.
Good evening, City Council. My name's Steve Christensen. I've lived in Sammamish for 39 years. And as a resident, I've tracked the community's activities regarding efforts to reduce our collective carbon footprint. I note this evening's agenda has an item concerning the findings of a facilities electrification study for City Hall and the Maintenance and Operations Center. At the present, natural gas heating systems are nearing their end of life. I'm sure you're all aware that weaning ourselves off of natural gas will be our biggest challenge in meeting the goals set in place with the city's Resolution 2023-1000. As Saul Griffin, author of Electrify, an Optimist's Playbook for Clean Energy Future, likes to say, what matters most are your big purchase decisions. Your next car, furnace, stove, water heater, dryer needs to be electric. The facility's electrification study has three options with greenhouse gas emissions and a price for each option. What is not in the price calculation is an estimate of the social cost of these emissions. The social cost is the monetary value of harm to society from emitting a metric ton of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere in a given year. The city's climate action plan on pages 19, 75, and 77 state that when a cost analysis is performed, it should include the social cost of carbon. Since this study does not have the social costs of carbon included, I thought I'd share my attempt. It's an order of magnitude estimate of the social cost of carbon that could be included with the like-for-like option. Using information from the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission and the EPA, I calculated a social cost of carbon based on 2024 dollars and a 2.5% discount rate. For emissions, I used the McKinsey report. It had two different values for life cycle carbon reduction. The chart on page 18 cites 6,554 metric tons, and the Sankey diagram on page 15 indicates that 65% of the emissions are due to natural gas, coupled with the code in the text that lists the total emissions for the city, for City Hall at 696 metric tons per year. Spreading both of these projections over years 2028 to 2050 produces values that range from $788,000 to a high of $1.32 million. My suggestion is the following. Request a McKinsey to include a calculation for the social cost of carbon for comparison of the various options. I also feel asking our residents to reduce their personal carbon
Thank you for your
footprint
comments.
without a similar effort on the part of the city is irresponsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula, and then Swan, and then Jillian Wallace.
Happy Pride, City Council and staff and city. My name is Paula Harper Christensen, and I'm a Sammamish resident of 40 years. Our pride is not just a celebration. It is a promise. And I feel that flying our flag for this whole month reminds us that this is a promise to our community. We kick off Pride Month with a proclamation and a flag calling on us to defend diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging of our LGBTQIA+ community, and to reaffirm our unyielding support. As we celebrate Pride Month, a time to honor love, authenticity, courage, and the hard-woven progress of the queer community, we must also confront a painful truth. This is also a deeply difficult moment for any in Sammamish. Extremists are trying to divide us. Transgender kids are being attacked verbally or physically. So I wanted to say, Mayor and City Council members, I want to thank you for our city's commitment to maintaining and highlighting diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and keeping it at the forefront of our priorities as we navigate our procedures to make space for everyone. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak tonight, and I do not take it for granted.
Thank you for your comments. Swan, then Jillian, and then Chris McPeak, I believe.
Hello, City Council, staff, and residents. My name is Swan, Spanish resident of 12 years, though as some of you are likely aware, that is the name I chose rather than the name I was given at birth. I am gender fluid, femme today, though that could change tomorrow. Why do we have pride? It is unfortunately likely that the city will receive messages from restless people, or already has. I know for sure at least one city in the region has been challenged on this. I have 3 minutes, so let's talk about some of the good and the bad. Pride is a celebration. Pride is a protest, not just was, is. Pride is an awakening, and pride is a memorial. We need pride because we live in a country where the fascist dictator running everything into the ground has decreed that people like me are a radical terrorist threat that he intends to have hunted down and killed. We need pride because everyone deserves a chance to feel seen, to feel loved, to understand that they are not broken even when everything hurts. We need pride because we live in a world where people can still be legally persecuted because of the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they see the people around them. We need pride because, as the world burns down around us, we need a reminder of the joy and community that we fight for. We need pride because pride still isn't normal. We need pride because the colonizers who invaded nearly every stretch of the world destroyed anything that they didn't understand. We need pride because we've always been here, as far back as ancient Mesopotamia and likely even before. There are a lot of really good articles on that. We need pride not because we can hope to change the minds of everyone who fights against us, but to teach the next generation to do better, and the next to do even better again. We need pride. We need the loud and enthusiastic support of the people in charge. That's you. Because silence and assimilation is not how we gain acceptance. Every proclamation means something. Every proclamation is a step towards that normalization. We need pride for all of us. That's the theme of this month. Because the only thing pride won't tolerate is intolerance. Pride doesn't draw lines in the sand. Pride is for the gays, the dykes, the kinksters, the furries, the ace and the pan, and everyone in between and beyond. We need pride because some members of our own community still don't always understand that. We need pride so that one day we don't need pride anymore. We'll just have it because it's fun and because the world will have grown wise enough to remember its past. Stonewall a riot. Join us today in being radically pro-transgender. Thank you and happy Pride, genuinely. Get out there and have some fun. I'll see some of y'all at the market, if not sooner. Bellevue Paws and Prize this weekend. Check it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chris, and then Jillian, and then Chris, and then if anyone else in the audience would like to give public comment, you can line up behind the podium if you're able.
Greetings, Jillian Wallace, they, them, of the historic town of Inglewood. Yay, it's rainbow season again, and thank you for continuing to provide this safe and accessible platform to speak and to create a kind and inclusive community. Though many functions this next couple of months, we can celebrate ourselves and our loved ones. Yay for puppies. Please join me in support for Paws and Pride in Bellevue, downtown Bellevue, this Saturday, June 6th. Also, yay for date night. Please join me for the Kindring Center, a nonprofit serving more than 3,300 children with diverse needs and their families each year. Their annual night out for Kindring will be July 23rd in Woodinville. And this time, I'm remembering to say something before the tickets sell out, so that's why I'm extra early this time. There will be plenty of ways to show your support while enjoying this lovely summer night out, with a silent auction, delicious bites, and a keynote speech given by me. Enjoy a glass of wine from the Winemaker's Reserve and engage in friendly conversation with this kind and inclusive community. There are so many people who go above and beyond regularly, and by supporting these services, you create the inclusive neighborhood preschools by extending more and more positive exposure with people who may be atypical. And that can be anything from intellectual disabilities, gender disabilities, physical, invisible disabilities, neurological, everything, right? It's for everybody. And our prideful communities provide assistance and necessary support, maybe for you, maybe for someone you love, but definitely for Sammamish's children, for our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Chris.
Good evening. My name is Father Chris McPeak, and I am the priest at Good Samaritan Episcopal Church here in Sammamish. We are a welcoming and affirming congregation, and I was drawn to them because I have always believed that every person, exactly as they are, is made of the image of God and worthy of dignity and love. I'm also a new resident to Sammamish. My family and I bought a house in April. We chose Sammamish deliberately because we wanted to put down roots somewhere that reflects our values. A place that is open and diverse and committed to the flourishing of all its residents. We wanted a city that would not just be a place to live, but a place to truly belong. I also have a daughter, she's right back there. And one of the most important things my spouse and I want her to know and have wanted her to know from the very beginning of her life is that she can be whoever she is, and she can love whomever she loves, fully, without apology, without fear. And we want her to grow up in a community where that truth is not just privately held, but is publicly proclaimed. And this is not a small thing in today's world. It is everything. And moments like tonight, when a city government pauses to say publicly that LGBTQ+ lives matter and belong here, are part of how that message gets written into our culture and into our hearts. And that is a profound act. And I'm honored to be here to witness it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else in the audience like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none, do we have anyone registered online for public comment?
We have no pre-registered public commenters online for tonight's meeting. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, up next we have our consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
It's been moved and
Second.
seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Stewart, would you please read the LGBTQIA2S+ Pride Month proclamation?
Thank you. Whereas representing lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and additional identities and orientations, including two-spirit with the plus encompassing communities such as non-binary, pansexual, and gender-fluid individuals. Pride Month is an annual celebration of the many contributions of the LGBTQIA2S+ community has made to history, society, and cultures around the world. And whereas Pride Month is in June, commemorating its roots in the Stonewall riots of June 1969, a series of demonstrations by the LGBTQ+ individuals against police harassment that marked the beginning of the modern gay rights movement. And whereas this year's theme for LGBTQIA2S+ Pride Month is For All of Us, inspired by a quote from activist and Stonewall veteran Marsha P. Johnson, who said, "There is no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." And whereas at its core, LGBTQIAS+ Pride Month is about visibility, acceptance, celebrating diverse identities, it is also as a reminder of the social and political discrimination and challenges increasingly faced by transgender and non-binary individuals. And whereas across the globe, Pride Month brings together millions through parades, events, and awareness efforts, it has evolved from its roots as a protest movement into a powerful fusion of activism and celebration. Now, therefore, Mayor Josh Amato, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, hereby proclaims the month of June 2026 as LGBTQIA2S+ Pride Month in the city of Sammamish to foster visibility, inclusion, celebration, and advocacy for the LGBTQIA2S+ community. And as we say in the pledge, and we have said every single morning, equal rights for all. There's no asterisk there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to pause and invite Diana Timmerman from Eastside Pride, PNW, to please join us, and we'll hand off the proclamation over here by the flags and get a photo. And Councilmember O'Farrell, if you could please read the National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation.
Yeah, happy to. National Gun Violence Awareness Day 2026, whereas gun violence is a public health crisis that touches every community in America. According to the nonprofit organization Everytown for Gun Safety, nearly 130 people in the U.S. are killed with guns every day. Twice as many are shot and wounded, and countless others are impacted by acts of gun violence. Approximately 38,368 incidents of gun violence are documented in 2025, resulting in 13,926 deaths and 21,686 injuries. And whereas tragically, children and teens are impacted by gun violence in all its forms. Firearms are the leading cause of death of children and teens ages 1 to 19. Every year, nearly 22,000 children and teens are shot and killed or wounded, and approximately 3 million are exposed to gun violence. And whereas research shows that common sense public safety laws and govern public safety measures can reduce gun violence and save lives, including responsible firearm storage, increased access to mental health and suicide prevention resources, investment in community-based violence intervention programs, support for survivors and victims, families, and coordinated partnerships among residents, schools, and law enforcement agencies and public health professionals. And whereas National Gun Violence Awareness Day takes place on the first Friday in June and marks the beginning of Wear Orange Weekend, a campaign that is part of the national effort demanding an end to America's gun violence crisis. And now, therefore, Josh Amato, as Mayor of the City of Sammamish, hereby proclaims June 5th, 2026 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the City of Sammamish, and urge all residents to wear orange on June 5th through 7th in solidarity with those affected by gun violence, and engage with local campaign efforts as we work together to put an end to gun violence.
Thank you very much. Moving on to unfinished business, we are going to go over the findings of the facilities electrification study. We'll give our team just a few moments to get settled.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks and Recreation. We are here to present the findings of the facility electrification study for City Hall and the Maintenance and Operations Center, which we will refer to as the MOC for short in this presentation. I am joined this evening by Andrew Roddy, Facilities Project Manager, with the city, and online by our consultants from McKinstry, Sarah Berry Murray, Buildings Performance Engineer, and Mimi Peterson, Senior Electrical Engineer. So as the major systems at City Hall and the MOC reach the end of their usable life, and as the city explores electrification of our fleet, this study provides a comprehensive assessment of replacement options, and also keeping in mind our infrastructure capacity at both these locations. So we have two presentations for you. We'll go over City Hall first, and the MOC is in a very similar pattern. We know it's a lot of technical information, and our consultants will keep it as simple as possible. We also want you to know that this information was presented to the Sustainability Commission last month, and they unanimously approved the findings of the study. And we are asking for council as well to accept the findings of the study. It doesn't commit you in the budget tonight, and those discussions will follow in subsequent meetings. With that, I will turn it over to Andrew Roddy.
Thank you. We are presenting the City Hall decarbonization roadmap today, and we will be outlining our purpose. We'll have our consultant discuss how to use the study, their process that they went through, the discovery of our systems that are in place, the analysis of what can be done with those systems, and then synthesis of what their determinations was our best roadmap forward. After that, we'll open it up for Q&A and then ask for direction from council. Sarah, thank you. We are looking to have the council endorse the findings of the facilities electrification study for City Hall with this presentation. And at this point, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. So as Anjali and Andrew alluded to, we're here from McKinstry to talk about the electrification study and get into some of the details. So to start off, we created this, what we're calling a decarbonization roadmap for the electrification study. It's a little bit of all of the above. And the purpose of this came down to a couple things. So initially, the buildings, City Hall and MOC that we were looking at, we discovered that the existing infrastructure on the mechanical side, so any of the HVAC equipment, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, any of that equipment is in the near future, much of it is going to be needed to be replaced. This is normal. Most mechanical equipment has a lifespan of in the range of 15 to 20 years. So as part of this study, we're looking at, let's not replace everything with just gas as it is right now with like for like equipment, which is essentially you have a gas fired piece of equipment, you take a brand new version of that same piece of equipment and replace it, but instead look at, let's see what kind of electrification options are out there and what strategically could make sense for the city. So that was kind of the initial impetus for the study, as well as the state of Washington has several mandates around reducing carbon emissions and transportation emissions, as well as reducing energy. And all of this kind of flows into what was created into the Climate Action Plan a few years ago. The Climate Action Plan was part of a requirement by the state to create a plan. So it kind of waterfall effects down the state side of things, down to the city. Additionally, you can see here on the screen, so there was the reducing the greenhouse gas emissions as part of the Climate Action Plan, but basically follows almost identically what the state is mandating. So that's kind of the tie-in there, as well as there is the program, the Clean Buildings Performance Standard, which is around reducing building energy use. The City Hall building is classified as a Tier 2 building, which means it is in the range of more than 20,000 square feet, but less than 50,000 square feet. So it is only required to benchmark the building's energy use and then develop an energy management plan as well as an operation and maintenance plan, but it is not required to meet the energy use targets. And then similarly, we'll talk about the MOC building is a little different. It is smaller. It is under 20,000 square feet. So it is exempt from all of these requirements related to the Clean Building Performance Standard. So I say all this just to kind of summarize the why for this plan being created and why the study was done in the first place. So we're looking at electrifying for a handful of reasons, not just, fossil fuels directly are related to, the burning of fossil fuels is directly related to greenhouse gas emissions. But there is great technology out there, including heat pumps that tend to be 3 times more efficient than gas-fired equipment. And the Sammamish area happens to be in a great location for any sort of heat pump technology. As well as the resilience that it comes with electrifying means that you're able to have more on-site power. Also, as the grid gets cleaner, your building produces less emissions, and we'll talk about what that means in a little bit here. So overall, this study was created to conceptualize the options for electrifying and to be able to long-term plan and communicate the big picture of the costs and the energy or carbon savings. This is not any sort of set in stone plan with guaranteed costs or energy savings. So the process that McKinstry follows in order to kind of go through this whole roadmap, we started with the discovery phase where we took a look at each of the buildings and we're assessing the existing building systems and the energy use that were needed to basically collect all of our findings into the analysis phase. Then we evaluated the electrification options. We looked at solar as well as EV charging. This included some preliminary design as well as energy and carbon savings calculations, and then also cost projections. And then in the final stage of the synthesis, we take all of these findings and create a strategic implementation roadmap where we take the capital improvements with the end of life timeline of the equipment to create a strategic roadmap for the city to follow. So we'll go through each of these stages and some of the key findings, starting with the discovery side of things. So on the building side, there were site visits performed where we look at all of the pieces of equipment, what is going on in the building. I know this is kind of a technical drawing, but the key thing here is that you can see from all the red lines connected is that majority of the equipment is connected via the same heating water loop, just as an idea of what's going on in the building. A lot of the systems are connected. We know that the building itself is unique in the fact that it has offices, a precinct, as well as an emergency operations center that needs to be able to run essentially whenever it is needed. So there is also currently a diesel generator on site. And I will let Mimi talk about the electrical side of things.
Yeah. So because electrification does tend to increase the electrical load, we also make sure to look at the electrical service currently existing within the building and how much capacity there is for us to add some additional electrical load. For City Hall, we had a pretty well-sized service of 1,000 amps on a 480 volt service. And we looked at historical energy metering over the course of a year to determine how much of that capacity are we currently using. And we found that to be about a third. So that means that 2/3 of the existing building capacity is not being utilized and is available for future additional electrical loads.
All right, then we get into the building a little more on the energy side of things. So this graph on the left is looking at the monthly energy use of the building and how it's broken out by using natural gas versus electricity. And then how that plays out into the utility costs on an annual level. So, many of us are familiar with our own energy bills. The amount of electricity you use is charged one way versus the gas. And then additionally, there is the electricity demand charge, which has to do with the highest level of power a building uses at any moment during a month. So it's essentially a snapshot in time, and the utility charges based on that, which the significance is there tends to be high demand charges for electrifying a building. The other thing is we use this metric called energy use intensity, also known as EUI. This has to do with basically the total energy use averaged over the amount of square footage in a building. And this kind of functions as a metric to be able to compare building to building for how intense the energy is. So we'll talk about that a little bit further here. So after we kind of look at the breakout of gas versus electricity of the existing system, we see about 65% is gas, and then how that flows into the actual end use. So majority of this building energy is going towards space heating, which, we're here to talk about the electrifying of the space heating. So that's pretty significant there. We also like to benchmark our buildings using that EUI number I mentioned against other buildings, just to get a general idea of, is this building a high energy user, or is it low, or is it somewhere in the middle? So for example, this building, we found, most city halls and other buildings are not going to function the exact same way as the Sammamish City Hall. So we took a Seattle police precinct to see kind of how much energy they use, being a 24/7 operating center, and they're slightly higher, whereas we also compared this building to an average of other public service buildings in the area, which it's quite a bit lower. So that's just another data point to compare that where this building is using energy and how significant that is. So next we'll talk about the carbon emission side of things. This is a big part of this electrification roadmap. So when we look at emissions, we're looking at scope 1 versus scope 2. Scope 1 emissions are direct greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels on site. So as a gas boiler would produce scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions from purchased electricity, meaning they occur off-site, but are directly related to the generation of electricity. So the utility, or how the utility generates electricity, is essentially what the scope 2 emissions amount to, and the amount of electricity used. So this building uses 700 metric tons per year, or has 700 metric tons of carbon released each year. Now, this graphic to the right is showing, because the state is mandating that the utility become essentially zero carbon by 2045, the grid itself will be getting cleaner over the next 20 years. So this graph is showing, let's say you do absolutely nothing to change the way your building is using electricity currently, it naturally will reduce the emissions, because as the grid gets cleaner, your electricity use gets cleaner. Now, this is only taking into account the current electricity use, not the emissions associated with natural gas. So this will kind of come up as we tie this all together. All right, so those were all the findings from our discovery portion. Now we'll talk about our analysis here. So we analyzed two scenarios. So essentially we're looking at the HVAC of the building, and we are taking let's replace every single gas unit with a equivalent electrical type of unit, or electric unit. And that is the full electrification approach. Now, strategically, we also look at a hybrid electrification approach, which is, let's replace a majority of the equipment with the full electric, or with an all electric option, and then as needed, add gas for that kind of worst case scenario. That is to say, a full electric option would completely reduce the carbon emissions, as compared to a hybrid electric option reduces the emissions 89% in what we have analyzed. But when you compare the emissions reductions versus total cost, you get 89% of the carbon reduction for about half of the cost of the full electric option. So that is the key driver of majority of this study and our findings with pursuing hybrid electrification as the best option. Is we know there is a goal to electrify, but we want it to be strategic and also make the most financial sense And so that is, for this building, what we are recommending as the best path forward. With that, we're also analyzed adding solar and EV charging. Those are to be add-ons. So you could do the hybrid electrification option and solar and EV or any combo of those, but you would only pick between either the full electrification or the hybrid option throughout this study. So just a little bit more details on what that actually looks like from each option. So again, we're recommending the hybrid approach. And back in the discovery section, I mentioned that majority of the equipment is tied together through a heating loop. Basically what that means is the system all kind of functions together. And so when you're analyzing these options, it all needs to function together. So what we are anticipating would be the best option is to replace the gas boiler with heat pumps. And then an interesting thing about heat pumps is they are incredibly efficient and great in mild climates. But when it gets to be really cold outside, which it only happens every once in a while in the Sammamish area, you need some sort of backup to meet the heating demand of the building. And so for our hybrid approach, this is where we're saying for that absolute worst case scenario that happens, less than 5% a year, we would put in gas boilers to meet the demand of the system, but 95% of the energy and heating would come from the heat pumps. So that's kind of the big thing there and what the technology side of things is. That is the hybrid side of things. And the key component in this is that it does not require any electrical infrastructure upgrades. And that is the kind of biggest cost driver to full electrification. So now I'll show you the full electrification option. This one is a similar layout with utilizing heat pumps for majority of the heating load of a building. But then you would utilize electric backup boilers to meet that worst case scenario. That increases the demand on the electrical service and requires significant electrical upgrades, as well as because this building is an emergency service center, the existing diesel generator would be replaced with a electric generator, and that has pretty significant impacts as well on the cost side. A few other just key things to think about. We're talking about utility savings as well, because electricity costs more on a per unit basis compared to gas. There is a penalty for electrifying, as well as with those demand charges. But in this scenario, we're still recommending this hybrid approach, which does have energy savings, utility savings. And then we're also saying if you pair this with solar, that even increases your utility savings even further. And then comparing that on the carbon side, since a large part of the goal of this study was to reduce carbon. When we compare the two options, they're actually, it was the difference of 100% reduction versus 89%. And so when you see those scaled next to each other, the hybrid approach is actually a really great alternative to the full electrification. Another big metric is the first cost. So to understand this graphic here, when we're thinking about replacing the existing equipment, we like to have a like-for-like comparison. So if we were to replace all of the gas equipment and all of the equipment, it would cost $1.1 million, whereas the hybrid approach would cost $3.8 million. And so when we look at what would it take to basically hybrid electrify, it is only an additional $2.7 million more than just the base like-for-like replacement. So that's kind of what this graphic is showing. And then when you look at that for the full electrification, that delta is quite a bit larger. And then both of these are showing the cost associated with solar and EV charging, which again are kind of independent of the actual, all of the HVAC replacements. So again, that hybrid electrification achieves 89% of the carbon reduction for 58% of the cost. All right, and I'll let Mimi talk about the solar, that was done.
So solar is a great benefit to compound with going all or hybrid electric because you are increasing your electricity usage. Combining that with solar allows you to reduce any demand charges and reduce any increases in utility charges that you may encounter. We found that City Hall was a great candidate for installing solar. The existing roof is a standing seam metal roof that pairs greatly with installing solar at a pretty low cost. There's minimal shading to reduce the output, and then the roof is also sloped towards the south, which is exactly what we want. We have plenty of options for how we want to size the array. We kind of sized it at the maximum option, which is 100 kilowatt. That still allows us to utilize net metering with PSE. We could reduce that if needed, but that was kind of where we chose for a benchmark. That also works with the existing electrical service and doesn't require us to upgrade that or the meter. So at that size, we're looking at an annual output of 94,000 kilowatt hours, which reduces your existing building electricity usage by 13%, saving about $11,000 in utility costs per year. At that rate, with the proposed first cost somewhere in the 300,000 range, we're looking at a simple payback in the 25 to 29 year range. That does take into account the 30% tax credit from the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. So that is included in that first cost. And then I'll also touch on the electrical analysis that we did. So as I mentioned, we did have a significant amount of capacity in this building, about 2/3 of our total. We looked at both options for hybrid and full and how much connected load we would be adding to the existing system. Kind of as Sarah mentioned, for the hybrid approach, we still had plenty of capacity. We added about another third to our existing load, so we'd be about 2/3 loaded. That would still allow for a small amount of additional future load. But as you can see on the full electrification side, we far exceeded our available capacity. And that is pretty much solely due to that electric boiler that we looked at adding for the full electric option. That's why we generally recommend moving away from the electric boiler, because it's used only for peaking. It's saving that additional, it's only being used maybe 5% of the time, but it really kind of blows your electrical capacity out of the water. So that was a significant amount of the cost, was we have to add a second service to serve just that boiler, another backup generator to provide that resiliency and redundancy that's preferred at the City Hall, coordinate with PSE to get a new utility transformer, which also takes time. So that is why we recommend going with the hybrid, which allows you to just tie into that existing service. And you can do that kind of over time as the phasing allows. We also did include in this study additional load associated with EV charging. Prior to the study, we also completed an EV charging or a fleet electrification study in 2024 to meet the cap requirements as well as other preferred, as well as other targets. So based on that, we proposed adding 27 chargers just at City Hall. So we included that load in here as well, and there was sufficient capacity with that on top of the mechanical loads. And back to Sarah.
Thanks, Amy. All right, so all of that, now we'll take all of this information essentially and compile this into our roadmap in the synthesis section. So this is where, again, we're recommending hybrid electrification is the best solution. From an energy saving standpoint, we're saying that the baseline existing building is using 160, has an EUI of 160, which when we implement the hybrid approach, it reduces the overall energy 43%, which is pretty awesome just from a replacement standpoint. And then it is expected to save about $20,000 when installed in combination with solar. So we take all those findings and kind of put it along this roadmap timeline here. So along the y-axis, we have the annual emissions. So following these notes here, we're estimating, if you were to install solar, that immediately reduces electricity emissions. And then here in 2028 is the big hybrid electrification implementation. This would immediately reduce the natural gas emissions, and then also significantly reduce the overall emissions because of that. And then the slope of this graph is showing that, as we kind of talked about in the beginning, as PSC grid is getting cleaner, naturally electricity usage is getting cleaner. And so the emissions that are associated with electricity use get less and less each year, eventually reaching zero by 2045 on the electricity side. Now, because we went with the hybrid approach, there is still a little bit of emissions associated with that gas boiler, which, as I mentioned, equipment needs to be replaced usually every 15 to 20 years. And with this, we're saying, well, maybe by 2050, your equipment will need to be replaced again. And by then, heat pump technology will likely have advanced quite a bit. And maybe you can install a full electric option by 2050. So that's kind of the meeting of these goals here. Additionally, we're showing here in 2030, you would be just shy of meeting that 50% reduction goal, but potentially other energy efficiency measures can be done, such as retro commissioning your equipment or any sort of envelope upgrades or LED lighting related changes to your building can impact the overall energy use. And then kind of look, this is essentially the same graphic as the previous page, but showing it on a timeline side of things. So again, following that same time here, the EV charging, that could happen essentially at any point. The solar side of things, we are recommending it happen either this year or next year, but essentially as soon as possible if that's an interest, because the IRA tax incentive expires at the end of 2027. Which means your project has to be completed by the end of 2027. So that is just the fire, if that is of interest, to get that in sooner rather than later. And then additionally, the 2028 timeline of doing the hybrid electrification of replacing the air handling units and the boilers and the water heaters. So that is the overall system. And that is it for the City Hall building. We can take questions as they come up, or
will you be moving on to the MOC after we go through City Hall questions? Is that the?
That's correct.
Yep, that's the plan.
Okay, perfect. Up first, we have Councilmember Stewart.
I'm so excited by this. Couple of questions. You talked about City Hall being exempt, even though it's over 20,000 square feet. And I'm just curious why, because I didn't have the same reading of that. It sounds like because unless we applied for an exemption, we would still be required to meet the energy use intensity targets.
And I may have gotten that confusing. I mentioned that for MOC at the same time. So MOC is exempt. The City Hall building, because it falls between 20,000 and 50,000, it has to report benchmarking and it has to have an energy plan as well as an operation and maintenance plan, but it is not required to actually comply with the energy use targets. as of right now. That could change, but there's not a date or anything where we know that's going to change.
Okay, if you guys could, if staff could share that out, like where that exemption is, because I just didn't see that when I was doing my research, so that would be great.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the exemption from the Clean Buildings Act for the MOC?
No, for City Hall, why it's not required to meet the energy use intensity targets. Because when I looked it up, I didn't see how City Hall was. I believe you. I just want to be able to read through why it doesn't have to meet those. Because it said that we would have to have applied for an exemption 2 years prior, so we would have had to have applied in 2023 for an exemption from that. So I don't think it matters because I think we're going to hit those if we go forward with this. So hopefully that would become a moot point. 2 questions I had. One is, can we power City Hall directly from solar during the day should there be a power outage and PSC is offline?
We cannot. There is a kind of restriction on having solar power a building during a power outage due to concerns into backfeeding the grid. But we can utilize, there is the existing generator that is fully backing up the full building. So we can still utilize that. It is currently a diesel generator, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the hope is that is a rare instance. But the benefit of solar is mostly that when under normal conditions during the day, you're using mostly the solar power and relying much less on the grid.
Yeah, the backflow to the grid, I guess, it's my understanding though that you can set up on site to be able to switch over so that it doesn't try to flow into the grid.
You can do that. It is a more expensive installation, but you can implement kind of a bit of a microgrid that fully kind of like puts you into island mode and disconnects you.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, that wasn't what we included for the study, and so that wasn't included in the costs.
Okay.
But that can be added as an option.
I think it would be interesting to know that because we do experience power outages here, and to be able to power City Hall via solar during one of those, I think would be a huge benefit. And then the other question I have is, what are your assumptions for the cost of natural gas when you're comparing the utility cost savings of having solar?
Are you talking about like the utility rate kind of side of things?
Yeah, like you said, if we had solar, or even if we go with the hybrid approach, right? Like we talk about utility savings of having the hybrid approach versus like for like, and we talk about utility savings with solar. I'm just curious what assumptions we're using in the cost of natural gas going forward when we calculate those savings.
Yeah, we were utilizing essentially that way we're kind of comparing apples to apples. I believe we were using 2024, 2025 utility rates. So I actually have those handy. So I believe they were in the range of about 13 cents a kilowatt hour, and then around, that's electricity, and about $1.26 per therm on the gas side of things.
Okay.
Was that your question?
Yeah. Is my time up?
It is. We've
Okay.
got
I can
Councilmember
come
O'Farrell
back.
up next.
That's fine.
Okay. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you. I just wondered, and Anjali, maybe you know the answer to this. What is the useful life left on our current HVAC systems?
So what we know is that the useful life of HVAC systems is generally 15 to 20 years. We are right at that 20-year mark here at City Hall.
Okay. And then I just had one other question. When it was mentioned with the solar panels, there was a potential for grants. Have we any idea how much that dollar amount would be if we were applied and were successful in getting a grant? What are we likely to see?
Yeah, so that was the IRA tax credit. It's 30% of the installed cost, and that we already included that when we presented that first cost of about $300K.
Okay, so that's already included in your slide.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other council member? Deputy Mayor.
I'm trying to understand this, and I've been looking, I appreciate the presentation. How much of the savings that you're showing or the decline in carbon use is as a result of Puget Sound Energy changing the source of power versus the results of our upgrades going on here?
That is a great question. I can dig that up real quick.
Great. And then I think we kind of have an answer to this, but if we're working on, say, 2050 as the goal where we have basically gone down to the 90% reduction, will we have already had to replace, you mentioned that we will by then probably have replaced, when do you expect new technology or something to come along that will be more efficient than even what we can opt for today? Yeah, I know. Well, the whole thing's a crystal ball, so.
Yeah, I think, honestly, heat pump technology keeps advancing every year. So it's kind of hard to say. I know there are heat pumps that they call hyper heat pumps that are specific types that are like really great at operating at really low outside air conditions. Those tend to be more expensive. I don't have a great estimate of when exactly that technology will happen, or those advancements exactly will happen, but it does feel very feasible as technology keeps growing.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what impact all of the data centers, and they're talking a lot about the tremendous use of power that's coming our way that we don't have any control over. Just wondering how that factors in as well. That's my last question.
Great question, and something that we're getting asked about a lot. Again, it's a little crystal ball of we don't know what will happen in the future with utility. PSE does take very seriously maintaining capacity for their existing customers, and we have not seen any evidence of them kind of cutting capacity to existing customers. We do recommend, if you are requesting an addition to your building, I guess to do it sooner rather than later. Predominantly, you're also affected by data centers that are very close to you. And sharing infrastructure, feeders, or substations. So not having any major data centers within your city can also help with that. And the last thing I'll say is you can also, this plan does include quite a lot of redundancy and resiliency. Having backup generators does help you with that. Having solar to kind of reduce that demand. Utilities care most about what's your peak demand. And so if you can install things on site that will reduce that significantly reduces your impact on their grid. And there's other benefits, there's other options that could be implemented as well if that becomes an issue, such as more battery technology, additional generators or something like that to do on-site generation. It can mitigate that.
Councilmember Treen.
Thank you, Mayor. So thanks for bringing up the idea that, or the statement that PSE is still burning fossil fuels, and so as PSE gets cleaner, we're going to get cleaner. So thank you for that. The other is on one of your pages on electrification of our fleet. In the thing, it talks about a cost. It's here. I'll get it. Cost to electrify. You got a nice little graph here. It's $15.7 million. And so I'm just wondering, parts of it are really colorful and look great. And I'm just guessing that that's the numbers that you used for your hybrid, and that so I look at that and say full electrification, whatever number you put out there isn't reflective of the work you did, because I have one chart here that says to go fully electric on our vehicles is $15.7 million. Based on that, we spent $4.5 million on our current vehicles. that have been electrified. So you see where I'm having a little bit of problem with the cost?
I can speak to that, Councilmember Treen. So I believe you are looking at the 2024 fleet electrification study that looks at electrifying the fleet itself. And it looks at it across the board for City Hall and the MOC. This presentation is only discussing the infrastructure that we would get in place so that when we buy those electric vehicles, you'd be able to hook them up.
Yeah, because, well, even on this one, that's what I thought. That's what I was kind of getting at. That's the numbers. You're just looking at the infrastructure cost.
Correct.
Yeah, because even on the sheet I'm looking at here, it says that the projects excluded the MOC, Beaver Lake, the shop, and the South Yard. So even when they did this study, it excluded all those. That was so I don't disagree with you as far as I just needed a clarification on what it was that you guys, what number you're using. And then if you could, I just have never heard this word before, and you had one of the things on your PowerPoint was a future-proof strategy. Can you define that for me, please? I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, I think we're calling out a future-proof strategy, as in you're able to essentially create a district energy if needed on site. As they kind of mentioned, if you were able to have a solar panels that were sized essentially to meet the full load of the building, that is one option to be able to basically be more resilient. Yeah, I think, Mimi, I don't know if you have additional context on that.
Yeah, I think I feel like I've mentioned it already a couple times, but part of what I consider for future-proof is increasing or maintaining the amount of resiliency of your buildings, allowing for runtime when there are power outages. We do have a better option of doing that, pairing solar with generators or installing some kind of option like battery. I believe that electricity is a more reliable power source than gas, which we do expect to be phased out. And I guess we're very focused on we have been very focused on the building level, but we do also believe that being part of the electrification effort and reducing the amount of carbon, it does have these more, more wide-ranging impacts as well on the climate side that do provide, a better future for us all.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lamb.
So I don't really have a question, but I do have a comment that I do really support this study, and it's really good to see the ways that we can lower our emissions, knowing that 76% of our emissions come from residents, households, that we have limited abilities to affect that, and this is 25% of the total emissions that we can affect from our city. So I'm happy to see the study and happy to support the recommendations from the Sustainability Commission and staff.
Councilmember Boyer, did you want to have anything in this round?
Yeah, we said we were going to go through the MOC, so I thought I'd wait until we see the whole picture.
Okay.
Because there's two pieces to this, right? Yeah, so I thought I'd wait.
Okay, sounds good. I will go ahead and go with mine, then Councilmember Stewart will come back here. One of the things you mentioned a couple of times is peak load and then batteries, and I didn't see batteries in here as a strategy for dealing with that. So I was curious where that is in your mind and what kind of cost we'd be looking at for something like that. Just real ballpark.
I know. I'm sorry for throwing that one in there. It just is also such a great option. We didn't include it mostly just because that was just a little bit outside the scope of this project, but it would be a very beneficial option to pair with the solar and the electric. Oh, ballpark is so hard depending on what you're looking to do. I would say estimates we've got, and I guess it does really depend on what you'd like to do. If you want to do just a battery for demand, reduction and not really long-term.
Demand reduction is what I'm thinking of.
Okay. It's in the like couple 100,000 range is what
Okay.
we've seen on previous studies.
Okay. I'd be interested, we obviously don't have to get that, but I'd be interested in that at this point. Interested in that and then the long-term payoff of using something like that with the reduced PSE charges. I also have a question about the 50% reduction goal shown on that graph. Is that just the goal for City Hall or the city-wide?
The 50% reduction goal comes from the Climate Action Plan, which is a state mandate or comes from the state mandate. And so it is a goal for both buildings.
Okay, but so theoretically, if we hit a 100% reduction goal in the MOC and then missed the City Hall by 60, got to 60% or 40% reduction, right? We could potentially have that math out to where, okay,
Yeah,
we would hit our goal. Okay.
Yeah, it's the overall goal for the city itself. So yeah,
Okay. And
you're
then
right. The kind of how that all plays out.
on the like-for-like replacement, I am curious if in how you're thinking of it now, or if it would be possible to design this system, if we went for a like-for-like replacement with the option to add in heat pumps later. And the reason I'm thinking of this is because we have an immediate problem with our budget. And of course, this goal we want to hit. So how can we cadence this in a way that kind of smooths out these expenses over time while still hitting our goal? So I'm curious if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think that is definitely an option. Right now, I believe it's one main or two main boilers that are serving a majority of the load, and so there could be some strategic way where we say, for this cost, we can take 50% and make it heat pump, and then maybe the remainder is gas boiler. And so kind of have that hybrid approach, but scaled down a little bit different than what we're currently showing.
But with the option in several years to add on to the electrified portion of the system to reduce our gas consumption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think that gets, there would definitely have to be some strategy around maybe sizing the gas boilers specifically for that. So if we want to keep, right, there's, if you think of it, everything is kind of modular, have this portion be modular heat pumps and this portion, maybe it's 3 different gas boilers with the assumption that in a couple, you want to wait until the end of the useful life of the equipment, but some option there essentially to like add another module of heat pump and reduce the capacity on the gas boilers. I don't know if I explained that very well, but that is definitely possible.
Okay, thank you. And my final question, which I don't expect you to have an answer for right now, but I am curious about this program, the hybrid option, the cost per metric ton of reduction from City Hall, and what it would compare to other opportunities we have in the city. Like, is this the best use of our money in reduction of carbon emissions, or are there other projects we can focus our efforts on? And I will take my question answer off the air. I'm out of time here, and I will move on to Councilmember Boyer. Light did turn on, so okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, so coming back, I just want to circle back. So just to be clear, the 30% installed costs already include the tax credit from the Infrastructure Reduction Act. You guys don't have any assumptions in here about grants. So if we go forward with a project like this, there would be quite a few grants available through the Department of Commerce, I believe, through Washington State and other agencies. So none of that is factored in yet, correct? Okay, so
that is correct.
Okay, so there are possibilities to cover the costs on this, right? That tax credit is just something that's already there. In following up on the solar, I guess I just want to make a comment that says, the 2024 natural gas rates are fine, but there's, we know that the cost of gas has gone up quite a bit, and that has affected natural gas as well. And by going more electric, and as PSE continues to electrify move to renewable sources, we will have a more stable cost structure, and we won't be as susceptible to these challenges. And the more that we can move away from having to be dependent on like a diesel backup, excuse me, the better off we are. Diesel is through the roof expensive right now. So just throwing that out there. I would say that from a PSE perspective, none of the data centers that are planned in the region are to be sourced from PSE. PSE is working on some modular energy solutions, but just to quell concerns there that PSE is not currently the provider for either of the two planned data centers. I would like to see if we could get information on that direct solar, and part of that speaks to that sort of future-proofing, and that is one of the technologies that we know is developing rapidly. In the next 2 to 3 years, solid-state batteries should become available for home energy use, and solid-state batteries are infinitely more efficient than our current EV batteries, and they also have an increased or a decreased risk of fire because they are solid-state. So I do think that looking at that option and being able to potentially have a battery backup system in the future, once we have that kind of technology, would enable us to do some of that demand reduction, and also make us more resilient in power outages. So that is one of the technologies that is rapidly coming online and should be available soon. And then I just want to clarify, the 50% reduction by 2030 in that graph was just showing City Hall reducing its greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. As Councilmember Lamb pointed out, our overall goal is to reduce the entire city's greenhouse gas reductions by 50%. We as a municipality can only affect directly what we do with our city infrastructure and our city resources. However, there are policy decisions that we could pursue to try to help reduce the other things. So I don't know that our goal for our city infrastructure should be just to barely meet the 50% or barely meet the 96%, because we do need to try to compensate for areas where we can't make reductions. So I just want to throw that out. One question is, in the study, it showed the hybrid option as a 91% reduction, but in your presentation today, you said it was only 89%.
That includes the 6% from solar added in.
But that 6% and 89 is 95. So in the study, it said 91. So
I caught that error today when I was going through this. Actually, that was a typo. It's in the rest of the report is listed at 89%. I think I had just missed that.
No worries. Perfect. Okay. And then batteries for demand, clarify the goal. I think that that is it. I do think it's important for us to look at what we project costs in the future. I know that for a baseline study, you had to use 2024 amounts, but I don't think that the cost of gas or natural gas is going to go back to that rate, at least not anytime soon. We can dream, but I think that is wholly unrealistic. Thank you. Oh, and just for the record, I fully support this. I think this is incredible, and I think that over time, we will find that it will be a bigger savings and a bigger benefit. And to the public comment, we can't expect our community to take these steps if we as a city are not willing to lead the way.
I don't have any more lights on. I know you've got more to get to. Can you tell us what endorsing this plan means practically for the council, so we understand what, if we voted to endorse, what that means, if we voted not, if we didn't take any action tonight, what that means? How do staff respond to that decision?
So we have a project that we've worked on, and we are looking for your support of the findings of the study. And so when it comes to putting budget dollars, if you want to use a different approach, I think we can still do that, because we haven't gotten to the actual design and construction phase. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Sarah, right? This is just the study, and we are yet to embark on. So if you have a different approach later, this is just saying we've looked at the study, we've looked at full electrification, we've looked at hybrid, and in the case of City Hall, we think the strategic approach is hybrid.
Okay, thank you. You can move on to the next slide, I believe.
Okay, and hopefully the MOC can move a little faster because you've kind of gone through this in detail. Of course, feel free to ask your questions or slow us down if we need to.
Yep, I can move on to the MOC building. I also, just to follow up on the Deputy Mayor's question, without the grid, taking into the account of the grid getting cleaner, it's about a 30% emissions reduction just from the hybrid approach.
Thank you.
All right, get my screen sharing here.
Do we have like a limitation on how much time, like a target we should hit for this portion? Are we running up against the clock?
Not really on your side.
Okay. Well, still, I think it will go much faster, but just curious.
Yes. All right, so we're here to talk about the Maintenance and Operations Center. We're going to follow essentially the same process, but I will get into a lot less of the details now that this is not the first time you're hearing this. So, yep, in here. Awesome. So I'm not going to go over this in as much detail. I just want to address that the Clean Building Performance Standard side of things, with the MOC building, it is under 20,000 square feet. So therefore, it is not required to meet the energy use targets of this program. I will keep moving on how to use this study and the process here. All right, we'll dig into the discovery portion again. So this looks a little bit different compared to the City Hall building, whereas I was kind of emphasizing that City Hall, a lot of the HVAC equipment is all connected via the boiler and the hot water system. The MOC building has a lot of standalone gas-fired equipment. So that means that you can kind of one-off replace equipment as needed, or electrify, you know, when we're talking about the potential approach of outside of exactly what we're showing in these findings, there is flexibility there, just to highlight kind of that as a different story there. So this building is the main maintenance and operations hub for the city. It has vehicle bays and workshops, as well as a couple vehicle sheds outside of it. I'll let Mimi, you can talk about the electrical.
Yeah. So this building is a smaller building. We had a much smaller service. Total capacity is also about like a third of what we saw in City Hall. It was 800 amp 208 volt service. So that lower voltage also gives us kind of less capacity to work with. We reviewed the metering, and again, it was about like a third utilized. That does leave 2/3 remaining, but it is just a smaller service. So that's like we have less of that pie to work with.
Awesome. All right, so when we look at the building energy use, it has a slightly different profile compared to the other buildings. This is how all buildings function. They're all a little bit different. This building definitely, you can tell, uses less gas in the summer months. So that is an indication that heating is a significant driver of natural gas. One thing that is different about this building is that the PSE rate structure is different than City Hall because they are small enough of a size that they don't currently have any sort of demand charges. So that's just a thing to note with this building. Additionally, that energy use intensity metric falls in the 57, is a number of 57. So it is significantly smaller when you compare it on a density of energy use compared to City Hall. But again, very different buildings. So there's that. Then looking at the actual energy end use, how the building is using energy. Again, a lot of it is falling into this space heating side of things, but the overall split over the year is closer to a 50-50 gas to electricity split. We also, for this building, because the MOC is kind of a unique type of facility, we did not benchmark it compared to other similar buildings because we're just not aware of any buildings that are particularly similar. On the emission side, The same story goes with scope 1 being correlated with direct natural gas emissions as opposed to the scope 2 being from the utility grid. This is the same profile of the electricity grid getting cleaner as the other building. But this number is essentially, again, if the MOC does nothing to change what it's currently doing, the emissions would naturally just go down from electricity. This building also has the units of 100 metric tons of CO2 per year is emitted, just as a data point there. So then when we're looking at the analysis side of things, something that is different with this building compared to City Hall is that we actually recommended the full electrification approach as the best strategy. Now, this is because kind of all the standalone equipment actually makes it easier to electrify each piece individually, and then also fully electrifying all of the gas equipment makes it, or it would stay within the existing electrical infrastructure. And so it does not have that costly upgrade that the City Hall would have. So when you compare these two options for 100% of the carbon reduction, it's essentially 600,000 more than the hybrid approach. And we'll again show kind of what those look like. And then additionally, we have the solar study that was done for this building, as well as the EV charging study. The EV charging study, Mimi will talk about a little bit more, but it is quite a bit greater in cost because it is a lot more chargers, as well as requires its own electrical upgrades. So that's kind of that larger cost driver on the EV side. So here again, we're recommending full electrification as a great option. So changing out all the gas-fired furnaces with essentially heat pumps, and then having heat pump water heaters to serve as the medium for some of the existing equipment as well. This does not require any sort of significant electrical upgrades. And then similarly, when we look at the hybrid electrification approach, this also does not require any significant electrical upgrades, but we chose to this is where you could essentially change what exactly the hybrid approach is. For this example, for our study, we chose to replace all of the furnaces with heat pumps, but then keep the gas unit heaters and all of the water heating equipment as gas fired, just to have a different approach. So when you're comparing this on a utility standpoint, it is very close. And, as you mentioned, the costs of the actual rates of gas versus electricity, these are not future numbers, and so this could change. But the hybrid option is almost negligible to what's currently happening, and then the full electrification option is a slight penalty. Now, if you were to pair that with solar, both would see some savings. And then additionally, when you're looking at the life cycle carbon savings, there's a little bit of a difference, but the overall, they're not too different, but since we're recommending the full electrification option here, that is the best bang for not having to upgrade the electrical infrastructure. This graphic looks a little similar, a little different. So we are saying that the like-for-like, replacing all of that equipment with gas-fired equipment would cost about $1.4 million. In order to hybrid electrify, it's essentially $500,000 more. And then on the full electrification side, it's about a little over $1 million more to fully electrify from the baseline like-for-like replacements. Similarly, we're showing that the solar and EV charging are potential added costs if you choose to move forward those as well. And I'll let Mimi talk about this solar.
Yeah. So we looked at solar for this site. we ended up sizing it at the same size as we did for City Hall due to that limitation on net metering. So 100 kilowatts, which is the max. This site was just a little less well suited to PV. It did have the same standing seam roof, which resulted in about the same amount of cost, that 300,000 plus or minus 20K. But we do get a little bit less output due to there being some shading for nearby trees or buildings. I think it's mostly trees. And then instead of being a south-facing slope, which is what we prefer for the roof, we have it located on an east-facing slope, which just gets you a little bit less output. But it is honestly relatively negligible. We had 11,000 in utility savings on City Hall, and this one we're down to 10,600. So not a significant impact on that, and the simple payback is about the same. Again, we were incorporating the IRA tax credit for this one, which is included when we give you that proposed first cost. And like Sarah mentioned, that does expire end of next year. So it's something that we would want to do relatively quickly. But this does pair really well with the electrification option because of those utility cost savings that we see. And then on the electrical analysis, this one was a bit different from the City Hall. Both options, we did not require a service upgrade due to the electrification efforts. But as Sarah mentioned, the EV charging infrastructure proposed at this building under that EV plan was a lot more significant, almost double. It was about 45 chargers, and I think there were some that were just like higher capacity. And so the additional load on the service was significant, and that's what we have kind of shown in this green outline. It was about 1,200 kVA, which significantly exceeds that very small existing service. So regardless of what electrification option is chosen, if the EV fleet electrification infrastructure project is moved forward with, then that EV charging system would need a new dedicated 2,000 amp service. And that is why we're seeing such a significant cost on the EV side for this building as opposed to City Hall.
All right, so taking all that information into the synthesis side, again, we are recommending full electrification as the best option for this building. So from an energy saving standpoint, it would be going from a EUI of 57 to 23, which is a 60% energy reduction. This is including solar into these calculations. So with that, that's also expected to save about $10,000 in utility cost savings with the solar. Now, when we look at this roadmap side of things, the shape of it looks a little different, but is still going downward, similar to City Hall. So kind of here, we're anticipating if we were to install solar in 2027, that would, begin the process of reducing electricity emissions. Then here in 2030, when we would begin electrifying the gas units the gas unit heaters in 2030 when they reach their end of life. And then here in 2035, the remainder of the existing gas equipment would be replaced with electric units. So that would completely reduce the natural gas emissions. And then again, here is where that slope follows along the PSC reaching zero carbon power by 2045. So essentially meeting those goals. And as you mentioned, yes, we do fall short on both of these buildings slightly with these plans of the 50% reduction. But again, it's across across all the buildings within City Hall. So not a huge issue there. And then what that looks like kind of from a timeline standpoint, the EVs charging side, that can happen at any point. Here's kind of that breakout of EV charging costs versus the service upgrade associated with that. Similarly, again, recommending solar happen essentially as soon as possible to take advantage of the tax credits. Then in 2030, there's that electrifying the unit heaters, and then the remainder of all of the gas-fired equipment being electrified in 2035. So that is the overall plan there. And that is it for our content for MOC. We kind of went through that, but hopefully that covered the differences between the two buildings enough to have a clear understanding.
Thank you very much. Council, are there any questions? Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Not questions, but two views I would take on this. So I'm going to talk about both of these, because I think your treatment of it was great. You did both of them. So when I think about PSC getting 50% of the electricity from natural gas and coal now, right? Our electrification doesn't mean that we move away from natural gas and coal. We're just shifting it to PSC, and then they're going to do that. So we are all, and I know they're moving away too. So PSC ended a relationship with Colstrip, Montana, yet Colstrip, Montana still loads the grid. So in essence, we're still getting power from Colstrip. 50% of our electricity is purchased on the wholesale market for PSC. So what are they really doing? They're buying natural gas and coal. So I think just by electrification doesn't get us what we think it's getting us. So I look at that on the supply side, or the supply view of all this, that electrifying ourselves here just means that we're going to rely on natural gas and coal. Those other technologies are slow to come on unless the SMR market really jumps up. From a financial standpoint, I look at the numbers that you've got, and if you've got, let's just use City Hall, 9,200, 20,020 as your annual savings. If I compare 1.1 million to 4.5 million, and then you said, a 30-year payback period, that ends up being an extremely negative net present value. To eclipse that, going back the other way, it'd have to be significant. So you've got a highly negative net present value, highly negative IRR. You've got a payback period that is beyond the 2050 date. So we're not even going to break even until after 2050. So I think about how we're going to pay for this, and that I think cost effectiveness is our fiduciary responsibility. I think about the cost to residents as a primary concern. So I know your question is, do I support or do I endorse the findings? I believe those are your findings. I don't endorse the electrification. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I do think we got public comment, and I think it is something that the state of Washington also encourages, which is, what are the social costs, or framed another way, what's the value of the benefits to our community and to our residents by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions? So best calculation here, we're talking about reducing over 200 metric tons of CO2 per year by these plans. Is that a fairly accurate back of the napkin calculation? Anyone?
Sarah, you're the expert in the room.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mouse to unmute. I think that is fairly accurate. You're talking across both of these buildings?
Yeah. I mean, and it's probably more than 200 metric tons, but that's just for nice round numbers, right? And I do appreciate that getting our energy from PSE is not a 100% green solution, but 50% of their energy does come from renewable sources. So even every time we move energy from natural gas to PSE, there is still a 50% reduction, right? It's not 100%, but it's a 50% reduction. And assuming that they do stay on a path of getting cleaner energy, I mean, really and truly electrifying and then improving our sources of electricity is the only path forward. There's not some other solution, because even if we choose to, use nuclear as a source, that's all going to go through the electrical grid. So I don't see any other path forward. But do you guys have any estimates or any list of the value to our residents from moving to clean energy sources in our city infrastructure that we should consider in here? Because I don't think it's just it costs X to replace it with natural gas and it costs Y to replace it with something green or something electric. I think there are other value factors.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number of what the social cost of carbon essentially gets at, but we do know that there is, we can dig up a number or find a number that's widely accepted on the actual long-term economic value and what the damage of carbon emissions do to your people and the outside of just the climate. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to throw out a few for folks, right, from an indoor standpoint, right, for people who work in the MOC or people who are in City Hall, right, your gas burning heat and other appliances produce nitrogen oxide, formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, and benzene. And they have direct ties to increased respiratory illness, asthma, and other things. So I think there are even costs that you can say by cleaning up our buildings, we're probably going to see reduced sick time from employees. All of these things, there's mountains of scientific studies and evidence around that. But for the community at large, I think it is important that as we move forward, we can put a value on this, because we do a lot of work around the city, around the environment. And I think, carbon emissions, how many trees do we have to plant to absorb 200 metric tons of carbon a year? I don't think our city's big enough to do that, right? So I think that's an important cost factor. And I don't know if that would help change any of your math, Councilmember Boyer, but I do think it's important for the community to know, right, that we're not just doing this to check a box. We're doing this because there are real benefits and real cost savings in the future of how much is it going to cost us to mitigate the negative effects to the environment, or how much is it going to cost us to mitigate the effects of climate change and prepare for that. Thanks. I did want to just say too, right, or ask the question, we can do the EV charging at the MOC later, right? Like that's not something we'd have to add in now. So
yeah, it's very much kind of its own timeline.
Okay.
And is not part of, I believe, is not part of what we're requesting to be enforced as part of this.
So if we did everything else, if we did the hybrid solution at City Hall, including the EV charging infrastructure and the solar panels, and we did the full electrification with solar panels at the MOC, we're talking about probably about $5 million, and we would get 195% reduction, or we would get, 100%, 90%? We're going to get a 97% reduction across the two buildings, roughly. Again, doing some quick math there, maybe even more. So we would be able to achieve our own personal goals. It is $5 million, but $5 million spent today is much
expired.
less.
I was going to let you wrap up, but I thought there'd be a question at some point. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Treen.
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking for my thing. So the question really is, what is the question that you guys are asking me? Do I believe the findings are accurate? I mean, I've read through all this stuff, right? Two times now. And actually, I'm scanning through it a third time just to make sure my points are on topic. So do I think their findings are good? Based on what I've read, based on their study, and I trust these two young ladies right here, I'm going to say, yeah, okay, the findings are fine.
Yeah.
So I can accept the findings and the data. Now, what I'm going to do with that data and my synthesize and analysis of it tells me something that probably borders lines more on Councilmember Boyer's. It's like, really? we want to spend all this money to do really what are you solving here? And if you're really not solving the real problem, which is with PSE, then I don't see right now in this next 2-year budget, if this is going to drive decisions I'm going to make on the budget for the next 2 years, then I'm struggling. So there's my question. Does this, if I say, yeah, I support the findings, I think they got the right idea, and then, but the staff then comes back to me and says, here in our budget is $5 million for electrification of the MOU and City Hall, is that in the next 2-year budget? And specifically the 2027 solarization for the discount.
Right. Yeah, so this was the scope of their study, and keep in mind this study is based on the city's adopted climate action plan. So
I understand that.
the scope of the study is based on what you have adopted as a city. If there is a different scope, if you want to approach this differently, we can go and add to the consultant scope and look at a different scenario, or we could wrap up the study as complete, and then we could look at a different scenario when we get into the design as guided by council. In terms of costs, yes, next week you will see a first pass, an early draft of the facilities capital improvement plan for the next 6 years. I believe the staff is showing the solar for 27. Council has a choice to keep that or not. And we are also going to show the design for the replacement of the mechanical and plumbing systems at City Hall in your next biennial budget. We are not going to be showing the implementation until the following budget, because it's a really good idea to get through the full design to know exactly what that's going to cost and then budget for it in the following budget cycle. I don't believe there are any costs for the MOC in the next biennial budget. Those are shown in years 3, 4, or 5, and 6. But in all transparency, and consultants, please correct me if I'm wrong, the costs shown today are the straight construction costs. So they do not include soft costs. So when staff put these costs in, we will add that factor in, as well as if the costs that the consultant has put are for 2025 or 26, we will apply an escalation if it lands in like 2 years out. So you will see both soft costs and increase as we shift years.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Would any other council member like to go? I don't have any other lights on. Okay, the ones that are on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just what Anjali said about the costing. I just checked our notes, and we are currently including, our costs do include total construction and startup costs, and that includes GC costs, design permitting fees. So I believe they are relatively holistic, but they are what we call rough order of magnitude pricing. So there is still a range within that, but they are meant to include those, a little bit more of those soft costs on the design side.
Okay, so I've got, I guess, I agree with that the results of your findings align with what you were studying. I have no issue with that. It makes sense how it was presented. Although I think if we're using this to drive budget decisions, I have a challenge with the implementation of it simply because we have a finite amount of money, and the capital expenses for this project, I believe, are going to be coming out of our operating budget, which is very, very much stretched thin. I do agree with Councilmember Boyer, and I agree with Councilmember Stewart about this is the payoff along with the unknown hard costs here, because both of them have to be considered. But my real concern here is not, I would like us to see us go this route. I just don't want to see us do it right now. I'd be interested in seeing what like a phased approach might look like over several years, especially for City Hall, if that's something that's possible. I think it does make sense for us to go to solar immediately, simply because of the expiration and the immediate payoff we get from that. But as far as moving to the full hybrid option right now, I don't want my voting to endorse this study to be taken as I think we should do it right now. So that, having said that, if that's the way it's going to be taken, then I would vote no. But if we're going to be looking down the road at this and go, okay, how do we actually execute against this study in a realistic way, given all of the concerns we have, then that's something I could vote in favor of. So until I feel comfortable that that second approach is the way it's going to go, I would be voting no on approving it, unless I learn differently about how this vote would be taken by staff. I have no actual questions. So unless you have a response to me.
If there are no other questions from council, I'm going to suggest that we work with the consultant on responding to some of the questions that we're going to get back to you on, as well as looking at this potential phased approach, if they can do it at a high level within the budget, or at least respond to how we would go about it. We could come back to you with that information.
Yeah, I don't want me as an individual to be changing the budget, but if there's room in the budget for that and there's not strong opposition from council, then great. But there's also, I've got two other lights on. I want to make sure I get to them as well. Councilmember Boyer, your light was on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess I would say financially, I see it the same way that Mr. Mayor does. I agree with our other council members, and I hear what Councilmember Stewart is saying. Sometimes, though, it's really frustrating to think that, when we look at the 200 metric tons socially, one long-haul flight is 150 metric tons, and there's 8,000 airplanes in the air right now, and we don't blink an eye. We also clear-cut the space for the Issaquah School District, took out that carbon sink, didn't blink. So it just seems kind of ingenuous in some ways, but I also go back to the financial side of it, that it doesn't pencil out. I believe that, we have 34 dams in the state, limited, and there's 66% of our electricity comes from those. I've worked at the Wanapum Dam for years, and it's about 1,203 megawatts. And there, if you drive out that way, you're looking at about 100 turbines as you drive out that way. It'd take about 2,000 to replace Wanapum Dam. I just don't think that timing will be quick enough, and I think liquid sodium SMRs will beat that because now the EPA is allowing that, and I think the timing should follow that, as well as battery technology doesn't support that. So, if anything, I would say that I would welcome a delay until technology advances. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I think moving forward on the solar panels is, I won't say it's a no-brainer, but given the 30% tax credit, that's huge. And I do think that we would potentially be able to get some grants to help offset that cost as well. I would also say that, again, all of these calculations are based on 2024 costs. Solar, the huge benefit of solar is that it stabilizes the ups and downs of costs, and it actually, we probably wouldn't produce extra here, but if we ever did have days when we produce extra, we're just adding to that green energy in the grid. So I think the solar panels make sense. I'd be happy to even volunteer time to go help find or write grant applications if that's what it takes, but I think we should do that. In terms of City Hall, looking at the timeline, I'm happy to look at a reasonable timeline so we can work it into the budget. I do think when we start looking at costs, though, we need to look at if we move forward, if we have to move forward with replacing things, and we replace it with the natural gas replacement items, that's a sunk cost of 1.1 million or more. That means if we replace it sooner than the 20 to 30 years, we're kind of throwing some of that away. And that kind of also adds to the waste. So I think we need to be realistic in how we look at this and look at how we move forward. I do think it would also be interesting to start to get an idea of how much we might be able to get from grants if we move forward to look at budgets, right? Because it may not be that we have to absorb this full cost. So I'm completely supportive of this plan. I appreciate all the work that the staff, the consultants, and the Sustainability Commission have done on this. We have an approved upon plan that is actually part of our comp plan as well, and I think we have to move towards that. We can't defy our own plans. So unless this council wants to revoke the climate action plan, I think we have to take actions to support that. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
So I agree with much of what Councilmember Stewart just said. I think listening to this conversation, I find it really disingenuous to hear from a lot of council members talking about the environment, talking about how they support wildlife corridors, how we should have more trees, and making sure we're not cutting down trees, and here we are having this conversation about not electrifying our buildings. And the whole idea about sustainability is doing what we can to not harm the future. And I think it's incredibly short-term, or short-sighted rather, to constantly go back to our budget and say, well, we don't have the money, and then put the responsibility on the people that fly so that they don't fly. I mean, I don't see how these council members can reconcile what they're saying about supporting the environment and at the same time not supporting the environment. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
So I'm just going to look at my fellow council members. These remarks are not addressed to staff. I always feel like I look at you and I'm not really talking to you. I'm trying to change that about how I give my remarks. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle with this. I do support this plan, and thank you for your work and doing the work that you were asked to do, and thank you to the Sustainability Commission too for their work. But then I look at the budgetary concerns that I have and the budget situation that the city finds itself in. I kind of feel myself agreeing with remarks that our mayor made about maybe some kind of a phased-in approach about how we would implement this, because I do support the recommendations. But then this was something I was not aware, that our two-tier buildings and our small buildings are actually exempt from the clean buildings performance standards. So that's something that we should really consider, because I want to consider how we are using our very finite revenue. So I find myself kind of stuck between the two things. I support our green energy and our sustainability plan, but I also want to make sure in this immediate term that we are looking at our budget situation, and if we have infrastructure that we don't have to spend our budget on immediately, that maybe we should hold back on it. But I would be interested, Mayor, in what you were saying about having much more of a staggered approach to it. That's something that I could definitely take a look at, and look at what the budget concerns and the budget implications for that would be. So that's kind of my very wishy-washy remarks.
Councilmember Stewart, I have your light on.
Yeah, just really quickly, I did a quick lookup, and to absorb 100 metric tons of CO2 per year, you need about 4,545 mature trees. To put that in perspective, the current mature tree count in the city of Sammamish says that we have 19,997 publicly owned trees. So to save 200 metric tons of CO2 emissions a year would equal about half of the trees that are in all of our parks and all of our city-owned rights-of-way currently today. And actually, it would be more than that, because all of those trees are not all mature. So I do think that, again, there are costs beyond just the hard costs of implementation, that thinking about how much we can absorb in terms of CO2, how much we can potentially reduce the heat centers, that, all those benefits we get from trees, we also get those benefits by not creating those greenhouse gas emissions in the first place. So just some data, food for thought. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights on, so I'll take that as an opportunity to close the discussion unless someone wants to jump in. Okay. Did you have any final thoughts on what? Okay, you're going to come back to us with something at some point.
Right, with possible options of how we could move forward related to the budget.
Okay.
accepting that this is good information, but you might have a slightly different approach you might want to take.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your time. And Sarah and Mimi, thank you very much for taking this evening with us.
Thank you very much.
We have some more items on the agenda, but I wanted to check if anyone would like to take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we will take a 5-minute recess. We will come back here at 8:47.
Council, we have 1 minute until our break ends at 8:47. If you can please begin moseying your way back to the dais. Thank you.
Okay, Council, we are back and we are moving on to our additional scope of work for Building 120.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, Council, and for the record, Anjali Maya, Director of Parks and Recreation. Your next presentation is on the additional scope of work for Building 120 and the extension of the YMCA lease. I'm joined for this presentation by Rachel Bianchi, our Deputy City Manager, Emily Scott, Recreation and Cultural Services Manager, and Lacey Lewis, Senior Management Analyst, all with the city. So the last time we were in front of you, I believe it was April 21st, we presented the Phase 1 findings of the feasibility study. And that night, Council added several items to the scope of work. So we went back and we had to work with 2 different consultants. We worked with the city's real estate consultant and we worked with Opsis Architecture, the consultant for this project, to come up with a scope, fee, and timeline to accomplish each of those items. So tonight we are going to walk you through the findings, make sure we understood your asks correctly, and then we would be looking to you for a majority vote on any item that you do want staff to work on. We want to be transparent that this is a lot of work and we do not have the staff capacity to work on all these items. So we have taken the liberty of sharing some initial thoughts that staff have, but ultimately many of these are policy decisions. And so we are looking to you to direct us to do the work. And Council also asked us to work with the Y and look into extending their lease, keeping in mind the city operating costs. And so we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. Okay. And I'd also share that many of these items might require your current work of scope to be paused. Like, you definitely don't want to be doing an appraisal and getting the site ready for sale while also talking to the community about what they want to see for this building. So there'll be a potential impact on the current scope of work. Sorry, this was the slide of why we are here. Okay, so first, this is just a refresher. This is your current scope of work. It is for the feasibility assessment and community use planning. And the work was to be done in 3 phases. We finished the first phase, and the second phase is currently paused. Community engagement is paused. What I'd like to clarify here is some of the market analysis can proceed, and we will be proceeding, and that is basically an understanding of the amenities that exist on the plateau today, as well as close to our boundaries with Redmond and Issaquah. So whether it's meeting spaces that are already available at the lodge, at the fire station, so that part of the study can move forward. But the community engagement and everything else is currently paused. So now I'll go through the additional scope items, and this information is on Exhibit 1 of your agenda packet. So it is the same table that we'll just go through one by one. In this first option, this is looking at a market rate ground lease, and essentially the city retains ownership of the land, and then turns it over to an external entity for use. And we've talked to our real estate consultant, and the recommendation is not to pursue this option because in the last decade, the interest for these ground leases has gone down significantly, primarily because securing financing is really difficult.
I will just also add that for a ground lease, it's a relatively small footprint site, right? So it really is probably not a viable option for the market rate version moving forward.
The next option is a different option of a lease agreement, a traditional lease agreement with an outside operator. In this case, also, the city retains the ownership of the land and then turns over the building operations and programming to an outside operator. And in this scenario, that this is for recreational community use, we just want to state the obvious that this would be a highly subsidized lease. Anything you want to? Okay.
No, I just think that, we've heard from the council that maybe there's an idea of keeping this, retaining the building as a community asset, but not having the city run it. So this would be the option. We just want to be transparent that there would be a substantial subsidy, but could be something that we could look into if requested to.
So this next option is the city annex, and this is the use of the building for our internal needs only. And if this were, just as an overflow of our current meetings or these, sporadic trainings, we couldn't justify the use of the building and the cost for that. However, we do have a needs assessment that has identified that our maintenance and operation center is at capacity and will not meet the needs of the city if you factor in our growth over the next 20 years. So if council would like us to look at this site for a second MOC, then staff could explore that option.
I would just say that right on 228th might not be the spot for your second MOC, but it is available to you if you would like to send us looking that way.
We also, in an ideal situation, would find an MOC a little further away from the current one to be able to balance the operations in the city. Of course, there's the option to sell the property, and this is a viable option. And as council is aware, that the city has already received multiple inquiries for the purchase of the building. And this effort would be led by the city's real estate consultant, and the first step would be an appraisal to determine the fair market value based on the highest and best use of the site.
As Anjali said, it's definitely a viable option for you all to consider.
Okay. Redeveloping the site, and this is long-range development of the site for a potential public facility. I think one of the ideas suggested was affordable housing as well. And again, this is a viable option if council would like to see affordable housing at this location. Staff doesn't have the expertise to really lead this effort. We would likely bring in a consultant to help us. And from our understanding, this usually ends up in a public-private partnership. And really, the city's role in this is to offer up the land. So it's in a different way. You're kind of selling the property. Though if you bring in a use like affordable housing, you're probably going to subsidize the sale, or you're going to just donate the land for the development.
So I would just add that some municipalities do things like this, right? And really innovative, thoughtful projects moving forward to bring in, whether it's affordable housing or a community use or something like that. It is usually a community that is really thoughtful and interested in placemaking in a certain spot or area, in my experience, right, in their community. Ultimately, we don't have the capacity for this. We don't have the expertise in-house for this. This would be something that the staff would have to rely very significantly on consultants, and I would say probably would end up with a version of a sale of the property. It would just be done differently than if it was just a market rate sale transaction, if that makes sense.
there was this ask for adding sustainability requirements and LEED certification. That is something we can definitely do, and all we want to point out is that it comes with a cost. So OPSIS Architecture just did a very rough exercise. It's sometimes harder to bring existing buildings up to sustainable standards, and so they have put a ballpark of about 2 million. So that would be added to your 4.7 million costs if you want to go all the way up to LEED certification. We could alternatively look at some sustainable measures, and all of this can be looked at during the design. So this doesn't add time, or we wouldn't have to pause the project. It would be a policy decision that council would make, and then the consultant would factor that into the costs as we proceed.
I would say it would also depend on, it would affect how we talk to the community about what we may or may not be doing as well. If we are still going forward to talk to the community about uses for the building, et cetera, then sustainability would either be factored or not factored into that.
So those are our options, and this is just a summary table that we'll come back to in a minute when you open it up for discussions. And again, what staff is looking for is for council to approve any additional scope by a majority vote, keeping in mind that this is a lot for staff to do. So, and we don't have the current capacity to do everything. One more reference slide here is council asked that we do a market analysis for the buildings of Big Rock South, and we have gone ahead and initiated that effort. All the costs associated with this will be charged to Big Rock South, and that is for a focused effort to make sure that there is a return on investment on the buildings at Big Rock South. So understanding comparables of like the barn at that site, and trying to project potential revenues, understand our operating expenses and maintenance costs, so that, again, you will have a better understanding of if it is worth saving the buildings at that site. With that, Mayor, go ahead.
Can we go back to maybe going off of the table will be helpful to council moving forward. I did forget one talking point to share with you all that I wanted to regarding sale, which was just so that everybody has this information. That's one of the things, council, that you all asked us to do as part of the fiscal sustainability effort was to go and ask staff what their thoughts were for fiscal sustainability and fiscal health. And I just want to share with you, this is just a point of information, the number one thing that we heard most from staff was to sell building 120 because of, and it's all a confidential job form that people were sharing with us, but staff do understand the requirements for subsidy associated with that building and the current fiscal health of the city. So just information I wanted you all to have as you're going through these different options.
And after we finish this piece, I just didn't want us to forget, we will cover the YMCA lease after we get past this part of the discussion.
Okay. Well, the YMCA may or may not appreciate that, depending upon how heated this conversation goes. Okay, up first, we'll start with, I guess, Deputy Mayor Treen.
I just have a question about the process that you just described. Did the Parks Commission participate, or were they involved in the decision to have Big Rock Park looked at as well? Or was that just something done, we just contracted with our consultant to add that to their work? I'm trying to, one of my concerns is that our Parks Commission is highly engaged, as you know.
Right.
And so when we start talking about things related to what they consider their bailiwick, the parks,
yes.
I just want to make sure they've been included in those discussions.
We have kept them posted of your direction, but this was your direction.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if you guys could explain once again for me the difference between market rate ground lease and lease to an outside operator. If you could kind of try that again. Sorry, I didn't understand it the first time.
That's fine. So a market rate ground lease would be leasing it to a corporation. Let's put it that way, right? They make widget X. They want to lease the ground. They want to do a ground lease for 99 years. They're going to do a full market rate lease, triple net, the whole deal, right? You as a property owner will be fully remunerated for that. That is probably not a likely scenario in the current real estate market.
Because you haven't heard anyone that has any interest in that? Is that?
Our real estate consultant has said that ground leases just don't happen anymore to the level that they used to. And when they do, they happen on much larger sites. So, and in her experience working with, like, school districts do a lot of ground leases, right? Because school districts own property forever. And she shared with us that even school districts that currently have ground leases would tell you they wouldn't do it again. So the other type that we're talking about is, again, responding to the interest of, could the building be used for a community use, but the city not operate it, right? So let's say a partner operator. That is what we're talking about with this other type of lease. So we have nonprofit Y. Well, maybe I shouldn't use that. Sorry, wrong letter. Nonprofit X, sorry. Nonprofit X comes in, right, and potentially provides yoga classes and bingo opportunity and that sort of thing. And that is what we're talking about with this other type of lease.
But take it over.
But take it over, but take it over the running of it, but there would still be, we believe, a subsidy required by the city in order for that to happen.
Got it. A recurring cost annually for
a recurring cost annually.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
I just have a question about the process. Are we just going to go down these one at a time and take a vote up or down? Is that the goal, or are we just going to vote down ones? What should we do to move this forward?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because there are competing elements here. If we vote to sell it, then everything else is moot. If we vote to continue with phase 2, that drops a few of these items off. I thought we could first start with any questions council had to clarify, and then if someone at some point makes a motion because they feel strongly about one of them, then we could take it up at that point.
Sure. I guess one question along those lines is, I would think, like, if the work here around sell isn't that we're necessarily going to go sell it, it would be go to get the what would be the appraisal and things like that. So it's not a final decision. It's, if I understand correctly, the vote that we would be taking is, do we want staff to do work to find out what each one of these might actually look like, right? So it's not even making a final decision. So we could choose 2. But what you're saying is choosing all of them is way too much work, and it's going to take forever, if I hear correctly.
And some of them aren't viable.
And some of them might not be worth the effort. But you need direction to say, what are we exploring, to bring information back to the council so that we can make a final decision on what are we going to do with the building. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we should have like a, there's a limit on how many we should pick because of costs and time.
Well, but we would also suggest that, let's say the direction is to move forward with investigating what the potential for sale would be. Mm-hmm. We would say that staff wouldn't recommend moving forward then with the rest of phase 2 on the initial project, right? Because you're saying maybe sell the property, but go ask the community what they want the city to use the property for. Those seem like 2 very different directions. So,
may I ask another question then?
Yeah, you've
got. Great. So, in terms of the current scope of work, would asking the community input, would one of those be asking them if they wanted us to sell it? I mean, not that I'm in favor of that in any way, but I'm just curious because I know that there are council members who want more data on that. I'm trying to kind of weigh how do we get all the information so everybody's comfortable with whatever decision we make.
Well, our community engagement effort really is more around, community uses for the building, right, and things like that. So it's a very different community outreach effort than do you want to sell or not sell. So it would be a very different effort.
Is there, and again, it's not my thing, but I'm trying to be very collaborative. Is there a way to get information to the council members who want to understand and weigh their options against selling it, enough information? And maybe they need to clarify how much information they need to feel comfortable with potentially not selling it. That's what I'm concerned about, is that we're not going to get consensus on something because we have some competing, like people want information to say, well, I can't choose between A or B until I have more data.
Councilmember, if I may, I think what you're hearing from the team a little bit is that each one of these items is a work item that also costs money. Yep. And so I think part of this is for you all to decide where do you want us to spend additional dollars. If it's the will of council to do that work, and then that's something that could be done, but they are very different pathways. Again, like we've discussed before, and they come with dollar amounts. And I think we want to make sure that we are spending dollars wisely based on what the council wants. And as the team has pointed out, some of these we don't feel are particularly viable, and so we wouldn't recommend necessarily spending those dollars. But if council wanted us to, we would need to know and prioritize which ones to move forward, because we can't do all of them.
Got it. Well, I'm in favor of continuing with one and then getting the community information back before we make the next decision. Thanks.
Councilmember Lamb.
So I'm interested in finding out a little bit more information on the sustainability requirement one. Right now it's listing $2 million. Like you were saying, I'd like to know like what we can do without LEED certification. Let's say we do a host of other sustainability things and huge benefit, but not costing $2 million. So it's not captured here. It looks like it's just going to cost us $2 million to go down that route.
This is everything. So like we said, you can do less. You can pick some sustainability elements, which is, again, a good return on investment, but not necessarily approach a full LEED certification. So one thing is, right now, we don't have dollars attached to the work itself. I think OPSA said for the design and construction phases, it's about $150,000 more of design work. Mm-hmm. If we wanted to spend a small amount of money for them to actually go and figure out what options would be good to do, we can do that. But we also feel that is maybe you can decide that you want to use sustainable elements, not approach LEED. We know that would bring down the costs. And then we don't have to do all the work now. We could do it at a later date.
Okay.
Councilmember Treen.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the cell, you said time is 12 to 18 months, and the current scope of work is 4 months. And so this would be, so let me see if I understand this chart right. It would be an additional $40,000 to $50,000, not including closing costs, and that this is a viable option. So the whole idea here, what I don't understand is I just don't understand why it would take us 12 months to figure out if we should sell it or not. So if that were the choice, you would think if our real estate person works on this particular issue, they would come back within a month and say, or two, here's what you could sell it for, here's the market rate analysis for it, and then it would be, what do you want to do, council?
The appraisal will take a little longer than that. And so I would say that between the appraisal and the market analysis, it will end up being 3 to 4 months. But then you don't need those. The 12 months is if you are really putting the property out for sale, you get a buyer, you negotiate.
Close the deal. Yeah,
close the
that's
deal.
thank you. That was really kind of the question. The 12 to 18 months is, yeah, we don't own it anymore. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'd like to definitely see that. And if no one has a question,
It's Christmas over here. Nearly all the
Okay,
lights are on.
thanks.
So. Okay, I've got Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Are we saying which options we really like, or is this just kind of questions time? I just want to be sure I'm doing the right thing here.
Someone can make a motion at any point, at which point we change the way we're approaching this. But if we can all get our questions out of the way so we feel comfortable, that would probably lead us to a better feeling at the end of the night.
Okay, I don't have any questions, so I'll just.
Okay. Okay, we've gone through that round. I want to talk about kind of how I'm looking at this here. So I think we should continue on with phase 2 as designed. I think several of these are complementary. So once we get to the end of phase 2, we'll have multiple options about what direction this residents seem to want to go, and then we'll have to come up with whatever that looks like as we package it together. And then we can make a determination if we're going to lease that to an outside operator to run whatever package we end up putting together, put out an RFP or what have you, to see if anyone is all interested. At that point, if no one comes back and says, yeah, we want to do it, then we would look at maybe what does it cost for the city to do, and then maybe go to the voters and ask them if it's something we really want to push forward with. But I still think looking at going with option 2 first, and then looking at the results to see what the building would look like, followed by the sustainability options, because that's all determined based on what the configuration of the building looks like at the end of our what does the community want. We have no idea what that is yet, so we don't know at this point what operator we might want to bring in or what sustainability efforts we want to put into the building. And I think we owe it to the community we have this property to look at all the options for what is the highest and best use for the residents before looking at the option to sell it or redevelop it in some way. We can always go back to that option, but if we sell it, we can't get it back. If we redevelop it, we can't get it back. And I think we have a real good opportunity here to provide a great service to our residents, or at least explore what that might look like, and then make an informed decision about if it makes sense for our city given the cost. So that's just how I'm looking at this project. Going forward with phase 2 does not take anything else off the table, but it does give us the ability to weigh the many competing interests and figure out how we're going to deal with that. Okay, I am done. We'll move on to the next round of folks, and that is Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest we can probably all agree that we don't want to have an MOC in that building. So maybe we can just knock that one off the list. I somewhat agree with what the mayor just suggested. We go ahead and do the phase 2 community engagement. But what's going to be critical is that we engage on the cost of providing those activities and facilities, so that and identifying the source of those funds so that our public is well informed, because everybody's going to say they want, but when they find out what it might cost, and I would include selling the building as an option for them to choose in a community follow-up. And the only other comment I would make is I thought the whole issue with this, when we asked you to go back and look at it again, was mostly about that the only thing being looked at was operating it as a city, as a community center. And the intent was to look at all the options for the use of the building. And so and maybe that will be part of the community engagement, but I was expecting to see, hey, it's going to cost you $15,000 more for the consultant to expand the scope of what they were going to review with the community. So I misinterpreted where you were headed with it. But anyway, that's my thought. I think selling it is always an option. We need to see what it would take to operate the activities that the public wants to have, and are they willing to pay for it?
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So looking at the matrix, making sure we can eliminate some of these so we don't have to talk about them anymore. Doesn't sound like the annex is a good idea. And what would we fill it up with, all right? So even if it is the MOC number 2, done. And you're saying that ground lease is highly unlikely.
Market rate, yes.
Yeah, so if we did all that. But on the list is not the leased version.
The attachment that you all have, we combined the two, and then as we refined the presentation, we realized we really needed to separate them out. So our apologies for that. That was really just the evolution of thinking there. So if you look at the excuse me, the table on the screen, it is on there, and it's embedded in that. It's just we made it a little easier on the screen than we did in the attachment.
Super, thank you. And then when you guys said that selling the property and then the redevelopment is a type of sales transaction, right? Can you do those concurrently, or are they two different?
We don't have the staff or the expertise.
No, but you would go ahead and, even though you get the expert to look at selling it, can you also get them to look at the redevelopment, since they are a type of sales transaction? Can you do that concurrently? Can someone do that concurrently?
I believe someone probably could. I'm not sure I believe somebody would necessarily want to. Because there's two very different things, right? It's, are you selling a property? Are you looking for a buyer that is going to have carte blanche with the property, right? Or are you looking for a buyer who wants to spend 18, 24 months negotiating with the city, identifying? Those are two very different outcomes.
I was just wondering if it's feasible. But we're saying that the cost for both those, the $40,000, $50,000 is to bring it to contract, right? That's okay. And is that the same for the 50 to 80? That's to bring it to contract, or what is that?
I don't think that that's probably viable to bring it to contract, given our in-house.
What is the 50-80 for?
The 50-80 would be to kick us off, I think. But I would be concerned that would be a little bit low if you start thinking about, again, because we don't have anything to bring to the table. We would be fully reliant on a consultant.
Okay, very good. And then you were talking about phase 2. The problem I have with that is that the phase 2, as it was written before, was merely looking at the contents of the community center. It wasn't looking at all these different options with a trade-off, and that's why I wouldn't support that. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the first motion and see if we can get this party started. I would move that we move forward with the current scope of work, gathering community-wide input with associated costs to get some direction from the community on where to go next.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Stewart, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think staff has a very good variety of things to choose from. I do think it would be good to give people an idea that, these aren't free. I don't know if we can really put cost estimates around each activity, but to give them a ballpark, or even to just ask something like, are you willing to pay more taxes to, do these types of activities? I think that's a fair thing to do. I don't want to get too specific with costs, because if we're wrong at this early stage, that could be challenging. But I do think it is important to let people know we're looking at these things. What are you willing to, are you willing to spend more money on this? Or are you willing to give up something else? And if so, what would that be? We could do things like that. But I look to you guys as the experts in engaging with the community on how to gather that type of information so we can make a clear decision. Thank you.
If appropriate, can I just speak really quick to this? So the first time we go into the community, we don't know what they're asking for, so we don't know how to cost it. All we can tell them is that even to bring the building up to, new is that 4.7 million with potentially some cost for sustainability. But we could definitely ask those questions early. If things that you ask for are going to result in raising taxes, do you still support? So we could ask general questions. But then there is a step 2. After we've heard that and come back to you, and we agree on some combined scope and we cost it, Then we have one more touch point with the community where we go back and ask them if they like the numbers they're seeing and if they still support it.
I love that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb, your light was on. I don't know if you want to speak on this motion.
I
Okay.
had a question still.
Yeah, feel free to.
For the redevelopment item, so I'm not clear, because here it says longer range development site for a public facility. So as it is now, we're planning, within the current scope of work to possibly put money to do upgrades, right? So how's that different from the redevelopment? Is redevelopment like basically reconfiguring the entire place, knocking it down, adding other things, which is beyond the current scope, which is just bring it up to the kind of bare minimum?
Yes, so we interpreted the redevelopment portion of the conversation that you all had back in April to be more of a, you scraped it clean, you worked with a private developer, you had potential for, housing, some maybe potential for some affordable housing on there. You could choose perhaps to have a community space built as a part of that. So the redevelopment option is really more of a private redevelopment with the city as a partner, because we would bring the land to the table.
So if we wanted a community center, a teen center, or a senior center, that would be considered redevelopment, not just under the current scope?
That could be something that we could look at and see if there was a private development partner that would be interested in doing something like that, along with, the market rate housing that they would need in order to, have the project pencil and all of that sort of thing.
Okay.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I understand the motion correctly, I don't think I'm in support of that, because and you guys correct me, my understanding of phase 2 was, again, just about gathering input on contents for the community center and usage. It is not to compare these alternatives, giving the community a view of let's say 3 or 4 of these, compare and contrast to those together. It's because I'd want them to see. Yeah, I'd want them to see, okay, here's what happens when we sell it. Here's what happens when we redevelop it. Here's what happens when we lease it. And we've already done the work on the community center, as we're calling it. We have more costs on that, and then the recurring cost. So if we only do phase 2, that. So I'm not going to go back to a month ago when I said I don't want to do that. I'm saying I wanted to see these options and compare them. And now we've taken some off the list, because you're not going to go down the path on all of these. So you could net this down to, I guess, lease. I don't know what that'll turn out to be, or sell the property. And I don't know if there's any traction underneath the redevelopment, but I would want to see at least those and have the community see that and then weigh in. That's the feedback that I would find valuable.
So I will just add that in order to do that, we would need to do additional work to even see whether or not there would be a potential operator out there.
Yeah.
Right? So I just so that would be a step, right? That would, and
Certainly.
Staff is happy to do that. The other step would be to, engage with what's the word I want? Appraiser, right? Because if
Yeah.
we're going to go to the community, the first question they're going to ask is.
Of course. And that's why I said that would be
Yep.
a precursor to doing that. And if you find that there is absolutely no one for redevelopment, got it. Give us that answer quickly, because then that's a waste of energy.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Anjali, just a quick question. You were saying about continuing with the current scope of work at phase 2, that it would include that market analysis of all of our facilities that we hold in the city and what they're used for and their potential future use.
Correct, because that's when you can, and even take that to the community. So you do that analysis, you take it to the community and say, here's what you have today, listen to what they need, and then figure out if you truly have a gap.
Okay, great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I
I second Councilmember Boyer's comment, though. I don't see why we have to have all the details for all of these options for the public to weigh in on whether or not they want a building to be sold. I mean, some of them might say, well, what are you going to get for it? But I don't think we don't have all the details on any of them. And yet we're going to take the community center to them. We don't have any details about that. So I don't know why we can't post a couple of these other options to the public when we're talking about the community center. These are the other options we could explore and let them weigh in on those. It doesn't seem that you have to have all the T's crossed and I's dotted to do that.
I respect that, Deputy Mayor, but before we go to the community to talk about a potential for an outside operator, we should know whether one exists, right? Because I don't know if an outside operator would want to come in and run that building. So therefore, if we want to do that, which is totally fine, we need to spend a little time talking to potential outside operators to just get because we haven't had any of those discussions, right? To just get some idea as to whether or not that is something that would be a viable option moving forward, right? So it's those kinds of things that would have to happen before we start back up on phase 2, if that's something that you wanted us to explore.
And I would add a comment or a question that that outside operator would just be any outside operator, right? Or if because we don't know what the community is missing today. So we don't know what we want that operator to do at this building. So that would be just looking at a traditional lease to anybody who wants to lease it, be it converted into, I don't know, tennis facility, pickleball, or a school.
I don't think you have to have all that information in order to ask the public's opinion about that use. It may be that you can then say, hey, we heard you, but we don't have, 6 months later, we couldn't find anybody. But I don't think that's going to be what they choose anyway. It's just letting them know that we've kind of looked at every alternative. Here's the alternatives for this building. Which ones do you favor? And what would you use it for? It's just gathering more information.
So I'll go and then come back to it. So I guess I'm having a similar challenge that Councilmember Boyer and Deputy Mayor is having. Is there's a disconnect for me between you go for we don't know what people want, so we get the first round of public engagement. They send us the 50 ideas. We put them all together, 3 different nice packages, I think, like the phasing has. So those are the 3 things that we can choose from. Or, community, do you want us to sell it and not have the headache? See if we can find an outside operator if possible, so the city's not doing it. If that's not possible, should the city run it or no? Or should the city take over? I guess I'm not seeing how this flow is an impossible ask. And if it means that the council can feel confident in their decision going forward and that the community feels like all options were considered, then I guess I'm really having a hard time understanding how this is not a possible feat. I realize the scope of work might need to be adjusted, but how this is not possible, I guess I'm not tracking.
I do think, in all honesty, we've done a lot of community engagement. This is a lot for your community to weigh in on. And I think I do think that these are really good questions. I'm just not sure that without a lot of backup information of what you would get out of each of these options is a fair ask to the community. We are happy to pivot the community engagement and change it a little to, throwing out all these options. But I guess to really fully understand the pros and cons, they might need a little more information, as would you, which is why we have spent all this time with our consultants to gather this information. But we are happy to pivot if that's what council would like.
I see you going for your buttons.
I'm just going to say, it's a very different conversation to say, would you like us to lease it to an outside operator who could have a variety of different publicly facing community-oriented activities, right, such as a community center type function, versus would you like it for us to lease it to an outside operator who has a school function and doesn't have that same community thing, but still has, right? And I don't know today, and none of us know today, whether there is anybody out there who would be interested in running a de facto community center on behalf of the city, right? These are the things that I don't know that we would be comfortable going and saying, do you want these different options, if we don't know that some of them are actually something that we could bring into fruition. I think that's what you're hearing from staff, right? We could certainly go ask 3 different questions. Do you want the city to run a community center at a very high subsidy? Yes, but we don't know what that number is, right? Do you want the city to try to work with a partner to run this at a subsidy? Because we do believe that there would be a subsidy. Again, that's not something we could quantify, so it makes it difficult for the people we're asking to give us their opinion. Or do you want us to just sell it, right? At this point, that is the information we have that we could ask if you want us to ask the different variables. And that's why we're saying we just, in order to have that true, transparent engagement with the community, we think we need more information before we get to that next step. If I were a community member, the first thing I would ask for, number 1, is how much and where the tax is coming from. Number 2 is who, right? Who's going to operate? Who would be potential to operate it? How much and where the taxes are coming from? And number 3 would be, how much are you going to make and what are you going to do with the money, right? So I think in order to have that credible engagement, we need some more answers if we're going to go that deep. That's just my opinion.
I can appreciate that we wouldn't have all the exact information. The city does tons of visioning exercises without having all the details that we ask the community for input on, and I think that might be all we need to feel comfortable about directionality from the community. But my time is up, and Councilmember Stewart is next.
So maybe I'm confused, but I thought what I heard you say was that first we're going to go present the community with some information about community assets that we have and say, given here's what we have, do you feel like anything's missing? And if so, what? Am I correct in saying that you're giving me kind of a sort of?
The first part is, what do you want? The first part is the unconstrained.
So right? Not saying here's the assets the city currently has, just what do you want?
Go ahead.
We would, and I think that's important because some of the community members are not aware of all our assets.
Okay, so we would say, here are the assets we have. What do you, like, is there anything missing? And if so, what do you want?
That is correct.
Okay, so I feel like, based on what I'm hearing, that we need to do that step first to find out what they want. And then that second step, to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, I think the way I see the flow going is that once we get that back, right, and again, we can throw in there, hey, what do you want? And hey, when you're telling us what you want, remember none of this is free, right? or something to that effect, right? So we get that back, and then that second touch point is where we can go back out and say, you know, maybe how much are you willing to pay for, like we heard these 3 big gaps, how much are you willing to pay? Or would you rather we just sell it and, not give you anything and use that money for something else, or we don't raise your taxes or something. I feel like that's part of that second touch point. I feel like that whole outside operator, I'm not sure that that's a question we need to ask the community. I think we need to know what the community wants, and then it's up to us to figure out what's the best way to provide it. And if the best way to provide it is partnering with some other operator, I don't know that we need the community to answer that question, in my humble opinion, right? Because that gets really complicated, because it may not be a full service thing. Maybe they operate part of it and we operate, but I think there's a lot of variables there. First, we just need to know what's missing and what they want that they're willing to pay for. Because other than selling it, all of these things are going to cost us something. So at least that's my take. And I don't know if that's amenable to people, but I feel like that is a viable flow of, let's find out if there are gaps that people really feel passionately about filling. And then let's take that information and figure out how we go to that next step. Is that what you guys were thinking? Am I thinking the same way? Am I out in left field?
That is the path we were set on, and which is why we have the contract we have, right? Yeah.
And I just want to be clear, we will do what the direction of the council wants to do, right? So we're just looking to narrow some of these things down. We don't have capacity to study them all. So give us a smaller list of all of these and we will go forth and make it happen.
So we need community input on, at least on some level, I feel, before we can take that, decide what that next step is, right? And getting some of that information. So that's why I'm comfortable with doing this. Maybe we need to say, you come back after that first touch point and we can figure out how to frame that next step. But I don't think we need to ask people if they want us to lease to an outside operator if what they say they want are X, Y, and Z community services. That's up to you guys to come to us and say, here's how we think is the best way to deliver those. Thanks.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I wouldn't conflate these two. I would have that study and what we need separate from what's on the screen here. The reason why I say that is that if you ask unconstrained, I can already tell you what 68,000 people are going to say. There'll be 68,000 different things unconstrained. The question is, what are they willing to pay for? That's a minor question when I look at what's on the screen in totality. Now, what are they willing to pay for? So what you're saying, Rachel, is that what you said is what I would do as a citizen. I would say, okay, so what are these? What are they costing me? What am I going to get for this? Where does that money come from? Where's it going to go? So if you need additional information to do that, absolutely, then I would support that. But again, that's not what phase 2 said. So that's where I take exception. What it did say, though, was get all the input on what people want, but it was unconstrained. And I just think we're going to set unrealistic expectations once you say, oh, motocross, pickleball, pet recovery. I mean, like, oh, good Lord. So I think you have to have some constraint to that, but I would start at the higher level with what's here. And then if it turns out that the community center has energy and people are willing to pay for that, then you proceed with what's under that detail. So that's a sequence that I would go in.
Councilmember Trine.
Thanks, because I think question is, because it'll help determine my vote, is if I look at the scope of work is 303, lease operator 7 to 10, sell it 50. Okay, we'll go the big number. Redevelopment, even if you went, I would not do the 80,000 because we don't even know, but for 50 grand, would I want to find out, would there be an expert outside that's qualified? So that's 410. So that would be, and then I would structure it similar to what Councilmember Boyer is saying is, hey, we just go to the public with in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, 4 plus a little bit, maybe 6 months, I go to the public and say, hey, we've done our work now as staff. I can feel comfortable. I'm actually willing to spend $400,000 with consultant fees, which is going to be cringy for me, but I'll spend the money to then be able to go to the public, that the staff feels comfortable going to the public. Here are viable options, which is all of what is in the current scope of work. It includes the lease operator, it would include the sell, and it would include the redevelopment. So at this point, I'm not willing to just go with the scope of work. Thank you.
Okay, I see no other lights on. We've got a motion on the, Councilmember Stewart.
I just wanted to clarify that I don't think the motion I made precludes someone making a motion for one of the other pieces of work to move forward. I was just doing one at a time so that we can make some progress. So I just want to make that clear that we could still go find out, an estimate on how much we get if we sold it or something like that. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. We're going to vote at this point. All those in favor of the motion as presented to move on with phase 2 of the original contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 5-2. Would any other council member like to make a motion? Okay, I don't see any other lights on, so I think we can move on to the white.
Ooh.
Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, I would, sorry. I would, so if we're gonna, for 303,000, is that phase 2? Just so we're clear, okay. Again, I would motion that we also gather information so that the community can see what I guess I'll go with the leasing the property, I guess, the one that's not on there, as well as selling the property as options presented concurrently with the top one on there.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Boyer, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think we ought to share with the community honestly what they're up against rather than just one option, because they will ask, why didn't we pursue these others? And I'd like them to see that in terms of the financial impact, including I think we see a lot of the non-recurring, but the recurring costs, because I do think that your community center will completely tip us over with the recurring costs. I just don't see that as a viable cost that we're able to maintain with the community center with our imbalance that we have. So our structural imbalance cannot sustain that choice. So we're going to get this information, and then we're going to be back to this. We'll be back here with Vicky. So my motion is to round out this picture and give a broader view. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
So I'm not clear why we're doing this. Like, I thought that we were going to go forward with gathering community input, and then after the input, we could decide whether or not we would need to spend the $40,000-$50,000 to get the appraisal to sell, or to do any additional sustainability. Like, I just thought we just need to know what the community wants, and then we could decide on everything later. Like, I'm just not clear why we would spend the $40,000-$50,000 to get the appraisal to sell if nobody wants to sell it. I'm not clear why we're voting the way we are, or rather why we're doing this process beyond just doing phase 2 and gathering community input.
I just want to clarify, are you asking an actual technical question?
Yeah, I'm asking you a question.
Okay, so if I can attempt, there's nothing that would preclude the council from going 2 different directions. If Councilmember Boyer's motion passes, we would go 2 directions at the same time. However, if it fails, we would just continue on with phase 2. So the question before us is if we want to have the 2-pronged approach here to present to the public. So that's what we're voting on now. So I don't know if that answers your question. But.
Yeah, I guess we're just overcomplicating it. Thank you.
But we're not really asking the community about the other options. We're just going down one option. So we'll never know the answer to the other questions. That's why.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'd like to ask for some clarity in the motion. When you say lease or sell, can you be more clear on what we're asking staff to go do? I'm not sure which lease you're talking about in the motion. Yeah, because you said it's the one not listed here, so I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
That was not a clear enough description to me.
Let's see. It is not the market rate ground lease one. It is the leased to an outside operator row, the sell row.
Okay, so it is listed here, the lease to an outside operator.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been working off of our matrix.
You've been
here.
working off the one that only you can see. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm surprised you guys
so your
can't see
motion
this.
was that you want staff to go investigate if there's an outside operator
lease
for
to outside operator row.
But we don't know. Are we giving them clarity on for what? like for a preschool, for a community center, for, what was it, motocross with pet care?
Yes.
While playing
Pet
pickleball? Was that
adoption,
the?
pet adoption and pickleball. Well, no more so than with the top one.
So
Understood. For community use.
So there's a sequence that you would, once we got information on what people wanted, then we'd go look for operators?
No. I'd say you. One of the things you're gonna, if you go to people, my motion is I want you to go to the public with the top line up there because we voted on that one, but also for them to understand the lease option and the sell option, and that's what we would get feedback on,
Okay, thank you.
and enough information to do so.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak to that motion as well, because I've only voted yes on the current scope because I wanted to add these. I thought we were going to go through all of them and add some others, so I support the motion to add the ground lease option and the sell option.
But you didn't say ground lease.
No, clarification.
Yeah, it was the
Sorry,
lease,
outside operator.
because you guys said that the market rate ground lease is probably not worth the effort to investigate.
Correct, according to our real estate consultant.
Roger that.
Councilmember Trine, your light was on and then off. Did you have anything? It was clarified. Gotcha. Okay. I see no other lights on. So voting on the motion as presented, I can't repeat it.
I'll say the motion was to, in addition to the top line, current scope, because we voted on that, to also concurrently pursue lease to outside operator and sell rows. And when you get community feedback, present those juxtaposed.
Gotcha. Okay. All those in favor of...
There's a second.
There was. It was
Okay.
it was Councilmember Trine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I'm going to need hands on the nays. Motion carries 4-3.
Thank you, Council. We'll just touch briefly on the YMCA lease issue then. We're not done.
Before you do that, Council, if we can have a motion to extend to 10:30.
So moved.
Is there a second? I will second. Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Did I have 4 nays just then?
No,
I think you had 3.
3 nays? Who are the nays? Okay, motion carries 4-3. Thank you.
All right.
She gets to do it all the time.
Okay, now we can safely continue. Thank you.
Okay. So for the YMCA lease, we currently have 3 groups using Building 120, and the leases are set to terminate at the end of June. The YMCA approached council and requested an extension for their lease, and staff were directed to work with the Y and to also come back to council with options, keeping the city's operating costs in mind. So we had a couple of conversations with the Y. Where they're at today is they use the building 39 hours a week at about $10,000 a month. So the first option is to continue that with the city bearing the cost of the custodial fees. And just so council knows, the city was planning on stopping the custodial for the building at the end of June as a cost savings measure. And of course, we would keep a small amount if we had an event or say a week-long training, we would be able to go and service the building. The second option is to continue the lease agreement as is, the 39 hours a week, with the option for the Y to sublease the space, and the Y would cover the custodial costs. And I'll just share that the reason that is in bold is that is what the city, that's what staff recommend. And of course, we will take direction from council. The next 2 options are requests for the Y to increase the number of hours to more than double. It's 82 hours a week at the same cost of $10,000 a month. So they would be paying the same amount but using it for more than twice the hours. And so in the third option, they would have the option to sublease the space and they would cover the custodial. In the fourth option, they would also designate some time for community access, and they could have some form of a profit sharing model with the city, and they would cover the custodial costs. So I'll go over some of the reasoning, and then I'm happy to come back to this slide for discussion. So an extension of hours is essentially a much higher subsidy. It would average out to the Y getting the building at the gym alone. All of these options are for the gym and the associated restrooms at $31 an hour. And that is less than what a market rate is even for one of the smaller classrooms in the building. The city would incur higher utility bills with the increased use of the building. And the other thing is we have yet to hear from the community as to what it is that they're missing. So we have no way of guiding the Y if they have the added hours, who to sublease it to, like who takes priority over all the, and we have been keeping a lot of people at bay saying we are going through this whole feasibility to be able to make an equitable decision on how the building is used. For some market comparables, we kept it simple. We looked at the Y's current rate, which is $65 an hour. Lake Washington School District, for their gym, charges in the range of $80 to $161 an hour with additional staff costs for weekends. The Issaquah School District charges in the range of $65 to $121 an hour with additional staff costs for weekends. And in conversations with the Y, if they turn around and sublease the space, they lease it at gym spaces typically for $125 an hour with additional cost of $30 an hour for staff. And then the final one is just the ongoing building maintenance costs that the city would have if we increase the hours beyond the 39 is just more wear and tear, higher repair costs, utilities, and just our HVAC systems, maintenance of HVAC, etc. And in all scenarios, in 3 scenarios, the Y would take over the cost of the restrooms and the custodial for the gym and the restrooms. So, anything to add?
I would just say that maintaining the status quo, right, continues with with the direction that we've had so far. It allows you all the flexibility. It doesn't create an expectation necessarily, a heightened expectation moving forward, right? Already there is this expectation that these 39 hours a week are available to the Y, right? If we increase those, then we are going to have that expectation moving forward, this is why it is our recommendation that you take that second bullet again, we're talking about for these next 6 months as we do this additional work that you all have directed us today. So thank you.
Can you show us that second
bullet? Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, for the bullet that you recommend, what is the cost? What is the cost differential to the city? Meaning, if we didn't extend the lease versus doing the bolded option here, what's the cost differential?
So the Y's lease is about $122,000 a year. So for 6 months, it's about $60,000. So the city wouldn't get that $60,000. We would be able to save some costs. We wouldn't have facility monitors when these tutoring groups and the rest of the building stop. We wouldn't have our custodial costs. They would be down to a few thousand. But some costs we are still going to have, to just keep the building functioning.
So if we go with option 2, we're not increasing the city's costs. We're potentially decreasing the costs compared to not leasing to anyone.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyer.
Yeah, to expand on Councilmember Stewart's question, so that's good. But when we look at, if you could go one slide forward. We would continue to be responsible for landscaping, building systems, utilities, and repairs. we have to do that no matter what happens. Is that true?
Yes, you would have more wear and tear if you expanded the hours. So this scenario.
But if we just kept it at the 39, or whatever the hours you are.
Yeah.
Because if we do nothing, this thing is going to get worse and it'll fall into disrepair, right?
That is correct.
It's like you got to change the oil and keep it going. Otherwise, we're making it a mess, right?
Correct.
So that means that we're going to have that anyways.
Correct.
So the leasing to the Y is just it's an additive because we're going to have this anyways.
Correct.
Is that true?
I should clarify that all the bullets on the slide are reasons why we do not recommend going to the 82 hours.
Yes. Got it. So I understand and I'm supportive of what you had bolded, but I just wanted to understand the net. The net is a plus with that, what we're going to lease out because we're going to pay for these landscaping, building systems, utilities, repairs, being responsible for the property instead of letting it fall into disrepair. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Do you need a motion?
We do need a motion to make a choice here.
I would, if people are ready, I would move that we continue the current lease agreement for 39 hours per week with the option for the YMCA to sublease the space and the YMCA would cover custodial costs.
Second.
Oh, go ahead, Roisin.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilmember?
No, I think we've covered it. We definitely want to be supportive partners, and as long as this isn't adding to our cost deficit, I think it's a great deal. Thank you.
Okay, I see no lights on. So all those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you for your efforts with them on doing that.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. I wanted to hear them.
Okay, Council. Coming up next is the interim city manager process update with our deputy city manager.
So, Council, you all received some information from me on Friday about how the interim process works. So, the interim process is a little bit different than a more permanent process, which we will talk about another night since it's already 2 minutes to 10. But for the interim process, first of all, it's really important that we're aware that it's all really about who raises their hand and says that they're available. And as we saw from the beautiful weather today, this is a tough time of year. Interims are largely retired. They don't necessarily, many of them, I'm speaking in huge generalities, I want to be clear, right? Don't necessarily have to work, right? There's usually a mission-driven effort to why they come back and raise their hand and say, sure, let me help this organization moving forward. The firms that we spoke with also indicated that there's just a smaller pool than there used to be, right? And there's higher demand right now. So we have lots of different competing things, forces working against and with us, as usual, right? We did reach out to 3 different firms. We do have 4 potential names. They have a wide variety of differences. A couple of them would require housing costs associated with it if they were chosen to come up. A couple of them wouldn't, just because of where they're looking. So you do probably need to move quicker than the public process often allows, right? If we want to try to get one of these interims to join us. Our recommendation, you already have a subcommittee, is for this full council to authorize that subcommittee to go ahead and do a couple of interviews and determine whether or not there's anyone in that pool that you all want to move forward with. So we're really here to hear your discussion and, make happen whatever we hear from the end of it.
Councilmember Stewart.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't do it as a committee of the whole?
So the information that we got from the firms is that these are, again, folks who are largely retired, right? They're not necessarily interested in what Rachel has referred to as the full beauty pageant of a city manager process, right? So I think ultimately, the full council would have the determination at the end of the day, but have the subcommittee do some initial vetting. The subcommittee's not making the decision at the end of the day. They're doing some we are proposing that they do some initial vetting.
So they wouldn't come back with a person, they might come back with 2 or 3 for us to talk to? Or I heard you say come back with a proposal for a person.
We're looking for your direction.
Okay.
So I think that we would have to see just whether or not all of the potential individuals would be interested in doing a process like that. You may have less to choose from if you do a process that is more along those lines.
So we can't have one-on-one interviews with people. We have to do a full panel in the public, because previously we have done interviews where we've interviewed multiple people, but we get to talk to them one-on-one. So I guess I'm just unclear when you say there would be less people interested in doing. What is
when
this?
you said committee of the whole, that to me meant somebody sitting up here doing
sorry.
all of that.
Oh, no, I meant what prevents us from all of us weighing in on who we might want to interview? Or
was that not when we were interviewing the city manager as opposed to for the interim position?
Yeah, it was, but that's what I'm asking is, I guess what I'm trying to understand is why can't all of us participate in vetting people? Does it have to be a public process of all of us together, or couldn't we do individual interviews?
You could have smaller group interviews,
okay.
Yes.
So we could all participate in a less public vetting so that we wouldn't lose people because they don't want the dog and pony show.
Should they again be interested in having 7 different interviews for an interim position?
Okay.
Right? Again, we're trying to keep the pool as large as possible for
But
you
we could do
all,
2s and 3s, right? So we could do 3, we could do potentially 3 groups, so it wouldn't be 7. Is that possible? Is that legal?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it depends on the individual candidates and what they're interested in doing. I think the other piece to keep in mind that we heard from the recruiting firms is that the longer you make the process, the more likely that they might get nabbed up by somebody else.
I'm happy to go quickly. I just feel like even an interim, especially through the budget process, it would be good for everyone to have a chance to meet with them. I think that's important.
I'm okay if the committee comes back with a recommendation. I just feel like the time is of the essence. And if we want to do 2s and 3s interviews, fine, but just want to do whatever's efficient. So.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, I forgot an important part on the staff perspective, is that if the committee is moving forward, that staff does ask that either myself or another director be involved in that interview process, because this individual is obviously going to be interacting a fair amount with staff, so would respectfully request the opportunity to provide feedback on that.
Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to agree with Roisin. I'm comfortable with the committee we already set up to do this work for us, to interview them and make a recommendation.
Councilmember Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you would like me to interview, I'm happy to. I gave my proxy for vetting to our committee, and I'm okay with that.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I'd be okay with the committee as long as it's a unanimous decision from the committee, not just a majority.
So if I may speak I'm not speaking for the committee, but how I would envision it would come through is we'd have some sort of scoring matrix that we would come up with as part of the interview process. And then it could be that we've got 2 that are amazing, or it could be that we only have 1 that we really think, but either way, the council, I would envision, would get a score from us in our reasoning as to why, so that you can take that into consideration. But I can't guarantee that we're all going to agree on who is the best person. That would be potentially a recipe for us to fail in the interview process, because I just can't promise that we'd all come back saying that one person was right. Councilmember Treen.
I agree, Mayor Amato, and Councilmember Lamb. I hope you chime in here too, please, because I think we would look at I think it's 4 candidates or 5, and we would have conversations with them, and then the 3 of us would come to some kind of understanding that, yeah, this is the top guy, or this is the person we like the best, this would be someone we like second best, this is someone we like third best. Or it may ferret out, though, that, hey, I like this guy the best, these two like this guy the best. That's fine. Because then we have two candidates who then come to the interview with the full council, and then the full council is going to vote on, I take it we're going to get to go to the back and have that conversation, or that one's full public too? Carrie, is full public? We're hiring somebody, do we get to go talk about their qualifications in the back and then come back out and vote?
Correct. You can have an executive session to discuss qualifications.
Thank you. Yeah, so we would then come back with the qualifications. We would discuss the qualifications in executive session. No vote will be taken there, but then we would come back out to the dais and a motion would be made for one of the candidates and seconded, and then a normal process would take place. That's how I imagine it happening, but that seems like the right process to do. But
Again, pending negotiations regarding salary and other finer points of the deal.
Sure. Thank you.
I'm going to jump to Councilmember Lamb here.
So I'm fine with the process that Councilmember Trine and Mayor Amato's suggesting, that we look at the resumes, we interview up to 2 candidates, and we bring it back to full council to discuss.
Okay, Councilmember O'Farrell.
And I just wanted to ask, when would staff have the opportunity to weigh in on that too?
So I kind of envisioned they'd be part of the interview process. That way these people, it sounds like they're not interested in we are in a sense asking them to come to do a service for us. And so if we are too stringent in our process, that might put them off. So having them, Rachel, I assume you, be in the interview with the 3 of us would be the most efficient way of conducting that. Okay, so I guess I will make a motion that the council authorize the subcommittee to interview candidates for the interim position and come back with a recommendation or recommendations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I don't think I need to speak to the motion, but I guess I will. I'll just say that take this job really seriously, and I don't want anyone to think that, and I will, take all of your thoughts into consideration, that I've heard tonight as part of the vetting process, because I don't want it to be a heavy-handed approach from us. So I'm definitely going to be keeping that in mind. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Up next, we have council reports. And I'll start down, Councilmember Trine.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So today, the Deputy Mayor, Trine, and I attended a reception and awards of the Martin Luther King Jr. Medal of Distinguished Service to my coworker, Ken Wong. And the question that was, this award is given out every year to members throughout King County. And there were 6 recipients. And the question was, what are you doing for others? Which is a question that Martin Luther King used to ask. And I just want to say that I've worked with Ken Wong for over 5 years now, and the work that he does with at-risk students and the work that he's done in Redmond and in Bellevue and even in the city he lives in Falls City. It's just really nice to spend that time with him this afternoon. So well-deserving young man. Well, he's an old guy like me, so thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended, along with Councilmember Lamb and yourself, the Youth Civic Summit at the IACS at the Together Centre in Redmond on Saturday, and that was just such a great event. It was great to meet young people from around the area, so from Redmond, Bellevue, Sammamish, Bothell, Kirkland, I think, too, maybe even Issaquah, and just talked about lots of different issues that they're very passionate about, like DEI, the environment, gun violence, etc. So, and we broke up into small groups. So the teens from Sammamish came and met with us and asked us lots of questions. We did our best to answer. But it was a really engaging event. We were there till probably like 1 o'clock, something like that. Yeah, it was really great opportunity to meet that age group, which we don't often have an opportunity to do so. And I'd love to do something like that again. So that was really fun. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyer. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I will be sharing information with each of you around the next EFR meeting, which is next Thursday, not this Thursday, so that if you all have any questions, you can get them answered and make sure everyone has all the information they need there, just based on what we'll be covering then. And I want to remind folks that we are having a Pride event at the market. It will just be June 24th. So there is no shame in Sammamish. We are having a Pride event. And I want to remind everyone that it is Pride Month. So be kind. There's no cost to being kind. There's no harm in being kind. And I feel like the world needs a whole lot more kind right now. So please be kind.
For me, last week, I visited Ms. Joey Fox's fourth grade class for 50 minutes. They had about 1,000 questions, amazing experience. I've never engaged with students of that age in that way before, so that was a lot of fun to go through. They had some really great questions. They had sent in some letters for council, so I'll be giving those to the city clerk to distribute to everyone. And I would love for us all to have a collective response to send with all of our signatures for them to put on the wall. They would be very, very excited to have that. This next Friday, I am also going to Carol Nicholson's class at Blackwell Elementary and meeting with those students. So might have a similar request of the council again. And it's short notice, but if anyone would like to join me, I'd be happy to, have you do that. So let me know. And that's it until. Oh, I've got the next Tuesday before the council meeting, the Finance and Administration Committee for the you said Fire and Rescue. So that'll be the first kickoff meeting for figuring out what we're going to bill us. So, Councilmember, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I am going to the PIC meeting tomorrow night, and the agenda includes reviewing a solid waste rate response letter, and then appointing mid-year boards and commissions. There's some that get appointed in the mid-year, others at the end of the year. And there'll be some updates on the 2025 flood response and the survey that was sent out to residents who were damaged by that. And then Amy and I both went to the Arch Association of, let's me make this right. It's the Council of Elected Officials ACE meeting, and we had a great presentation on how affordable housing gets financed from the federal level on down, and that was really interesting. And then King County Executive Zahaldeh's office provided an update on his plans for funding for housing. And then we talked about the cities that are contributing to Arch also getting credit for some of the projects that get built for a proportionate share. This is something that all the cities in SCA are looking at. How do we, if we're contributing money to the trust fund, but we don't build something here, we should at least get credit for the fact that we supported a project somewhere else. So that was also brought up, and that I think we'll probably bring that discussion back to the council in a future meeting for us to take a position on, because all the cities are doing that. So, and then in the end, Woodinville presented information about an affordable housing project they built, and I shared information about the cottages, our Habitat for Humanity's project here. Those were two that were highlighted. It was fun.
Councilmember Lamb.
I'm at Coffee with Council on Saturday. I'm not sure who else is joining me. Oh, Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Treen.
Boyer.
Oh, Boyer. Oh, okay.
I'm volunteering him again.
Mine was good job bringing it up.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Lamb stole my thunder, so I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor,
Fighting
say
over
aye.
it now.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Really happy to report that everyone came out exceedingly happy. So Chief Aho is very pleased with the outcome. The board is pleased with the outcome. We were also able to ratify the